Chapter 676. The battle between Leng Shiqi and Li Jianghu actually lasted for a very short time. Counting the time they spent talking, it was only a short time. In fact, if Leng Shiqi went all out, he could even kill Li Jianghu in 1 or 2 moves. But in addition to Li Jianghu, there was also the Li family's 4th uncle who was even more troublesome. And even if he repelled these 2 people today, he would only be able to break their spiritual adhesion technique. With their unity of heaven and man cultivation, they would at most need to recuperate for a period of time. At worst, they would lose some of their lifespan. This was equivalent to not being able to kill them. Once Leng Shiqi exposed too many of his trump cards, it would be even more disadvantageous for him in the future. Leng Shiqi was about to pick up the mustard seed bracelet on the ground, but he didn't expect that a stone wall beside him would suddenly explode. It was forcibly broken by someone. Leng Shiqi's heart moved, and his body appeared in the other corner of the stone room as if he had teleported. At this time, there was only one person trapped in the array, and only one person could violently destroy the stone wall. That person was the Li family's 4th uncle who had possessed Gong Lianghui's body. He was also the most powerful enemy Leng Shiqi had to face. Li family's 4th uncle immediately saw Li Gang lying on the ground without any breath. He also knew that Li Jiuji's spiritual adhesion technique had been broken, and his heart couldn't help but sink. What made him even more uncomfortable was that he could no longer sense the aura of the other spirit cultivators around him, and there were probably not many of them left. At this time he looked at Leng Shiqi, and in addition to the killing intent in his eyes, there was another emotion, and that was a trace of fear. Li family's 4th uncle wasn't afraid of Leng Shiqi's strength, but his potential. If this assassination was included, they had already assassinated Leng Shiqi 3 times in a row. The first time they missed, and the second time, Li Juning, who was at the unity of heaven and man realm, died. This time the siege could be considered a failure. Without everyone's cooperation, Li family's 4th uncle had no confidence in killing Leng Shiqi, just like Li Jianghu. Leng Shiqi laughed when he saw Li family's 4th uncle looking at him. Li family's 4th uncle, is it? I don't mind telling you that you're the only one left of the 37 people who came to kill me. Next up, whether I fight or leave is up to me. Your spiritual attachment alone is not enough to keep me here. If you dare to use power beyond the spirit astral realm, you will be sent out of Void Scar. In Void Scar Sky, only the first prince, Lei Haoyan, had this possibility. Once you were pushed out, it would definitely be revealed that Li Jucheng had done something behind the scenes. At that time, even Li Juecheng wouldn't be able to explain himself. Daring to tamper with the emperor's selection of the crown prince, this crime was enough to make Li Juecheng lose his position as one of the 4 great chiefs. If you rely on your current strength, it's even more impossible for you to kill me. In other words, you've completely failed. Not bad. Li family's 4th uncle also said frankly, then why are you still here? Is it just to humiliate this old man? Of course not. Leng Shiqi shook his head. It said that the spiritual attachment is a forbidden technique. It consumes the essence, blood and lifespan of both parties. Moreover, there's a big difference between dispelling it voluntarily and being forced to do so. 4th uncle, you're already old. If you suffer a backlash from the spiritual attachment, I'm afraid you won't be able to fight for a while. Li family's 4th uncle understood Leng Shiqi's meaning. Leng Shiqi wanted to kill his spiritual body and severely injure him, thus weakening the Li family's strength. Li family's 4th uncle's eyes were calm. He said calmly, you've said so much to me, but you're just stalling for time. After a series of battles, how much strength do you have left? My spiritual attachment can't be maintained for too long. You want to stall for time to recover your spiritual power and waste my time? Then guess why I'm standing here and letting you stall for time? Li family's 4th uncle's words hit the nail on the head. Leng Shiqi also had a faint ominous feeling. Li family's 4th uncle suddenly raised his palm and said resolutely, you're right, but you're wrong about one thing. That is my determination. Your potential is too horrible. I can't kill you this time, but I'll force you to show your real trump card even at the cost of my lifespan. The reason why I let you stall for time is that I'm also stalling for time. With a roar, he suddenly struck out with his palm. Violent gang chi filled the sky, and in an instant, the vigorous palm energy caused the entire earth chaos formation to tremble. It was even to the point where it affected the spiritual energy of the world. The power contained within it was enough to make anyone pale at the mere mention of it. Leng Shiqi was also surprised that Li family's 4th uncle could use such a powerful palm power in the state of spiritual attachment. What was terrible was that the knife momentum was not beyond the scope of Gang's spirit realm, but it made Leng Shiqi feel that his life was in danger. Li family's fourth uncle turned his belief, determination to kill Leng Shiqi into the palm power. Leng Shiqi did not dare to slack off. He clenched his fists and black and white light suddenly appeared on both sides. Then two pillars of light rose into the sky, even directly penetrating all the stone walls and rushing into the sky. Just when Leng Shiqi was about to merge the black and white light pillars to perform Wandering Dragon Great Void, Li family's fourth uncle smiled strangely. He suddenly shouted, "Break!" After that, the might of the heaven-shaking palm suddenly changed. It was like a sharp sword that slashed out horizontally and slashed apart everything in the world. Even the connection between Leng Shiqi and the black and white light pillars in the sky was cut off. Leng Shiqi's face froze and he felt a little incredible in his heart. His Wandering Dragon Great Void was broken? Well, that wasn't exactly the case. To be more precise, he hadn't even been able to use Roaming Dragon, the Great Void. He had already been interrupted when he was making his first move. Ha ha ha. Li family's fourth uncle let out a rare wild laugh. Lu Xingji, this old man has studied your void-swimming dragon for a long time and has already found a way to break it. If you don't have any other trump cards today, you'd better leave your life behind. In fact, Leng Shiqi did have a lot of trump cards, but he did not want to expose them in front of the Li family. Now, with a fierce face, he gently touched his dantian with a finger. In the spirit sea, a mini red flame dragon suddenly became excited. In an instant, a golden red flame dragon roared and flew into the sky, and the raging golden flame burned everything in the world. The giant ice net specially used to restrain the golden earth dragon flame was all burned out in a breath. Leng Shiqi had directly released the golden earth dragon flame's fire seed. In the past he had only used a part of the flame. If he directly used the golden earth dragon flame, it would cause great damage to the fire seed. However, in order to protect his own information, he had no choice but to use this method. The flame dragon was born, and the dragon's might descended upon the world. Under the endless golden earth dragon flame, whether it was the earth chaos formation, the yellow mud swamp, the netherworld's curtain of darkness, or Li family's fourth uncle's palm, everything was turned to ashes. The Delta Origi and the others had quickly retreated the moment the flame dragon appeared, leaving behind a few unlucky fellows who had just escaped their slaughter to welcome the world-ending dragon flame. Boom boom boom. A series of explosions sounded, and more than half of the yellow mud swamp within a dozen miles evaporated, revealing the corpses of monsters, including Gong Lianghui who carried Li family's fourth uncle's spirit body. Li family's fourth uncle tried his best to force out Leng Shiqi's true trump card, but in the end he only managed to force out half of it. Leng Shiqi's face was pale as he withdrew the golden earth dragon flame's fire seed. In just a few breaths, the fire seed had weakened a lot, and he quickly sent it into his spirit sea to slowly nourish it. He glanced around and found that some people were already rushing over. He turned to the Delta Origi and said, "There's no time to explain, quickly enter the underworld. We have to leave this place quickly." Then he sent the three of them into the underworld, and disappeared in a flash of tricolored light. Just as Leng Shiqi was teleported out, a 9-colored light suddenly flashed in the air, and a young girl appeared out of thin air. She was Meng Tiantian of the 10,000 Wonders sect. Her eyes were filled with interest and she murmured, "Interesting, very interesting, this is the seed I'm most satisfied with." Chapter 677. Meng Tiantian smiled gently and disappeared again. Not long after, dozens of people rushed over. When they saw the swamp that was almost completely evaporated and the piles of ashes, they were all astonished. What a terrible power of blazing flame. What happened here? I remember that a group of people came here not long ago. What terrible danger did they encounter to be wiped out? The power just now seemed to be caused by some kind of strange fire. Look, there is still a weak flame burning. Just this little flame made me afraid to touch it. That's right, a scarlet gold flame with a dragon roar echoing through the sky. Could this be the scarlet gold earth dragon flame? Who refined the golden earth dragon flame? At this time, a spirit cultivator of the Dark Thunder Guard opened his mouth and hesitated, but still did not say it. Although the information about Leng Shiqi was leaked, it was only limited to the middle and high level of the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guard. If he made it public, he would break the rules. And he also thought that if these people were all killed by Leng Shiqi, then he would have to bear the anger of Leng Shiqi if he leaked the information about Leng Shiqi refining the golden earth dragon flame. This person knew that he could not afford to offend, so he had to keep the peace. Leng Shiqi, on the other hand, used his fate skill to teleport him to another battlefield, which was Lei Haoyin's battlefield. At this time, Lei Haoyin was running away, and there were more than a dozen masters in the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm behind him. Lei Haoyin's own people were basically blocked in the yellow mud swamp, so there was no support for the time being. He could only fight alone. Leng Shiqi came to the battlefield, swallowed a few elixirs to restore spiritual power, and watched the battle below. It was a good idea for Lei Haoyin and the other two to work together to eliminate Lei Haoyin, but there was no trust between the three of them. Therefore Leng Shiqi did not think that they could eliminate Lei Haoyin so easily. Lei Haoyin was not very fast, but he was not slow either. He didn't seem to practice any body movement or spiritual force, but after all he was in the realm of oneness of heaven and men. Even if his cultivation was restricted, the spiritual force in his body was still far stronger than that in the realm of Gang Spirit. At this moment he was recklessly using his spiritual energy. With every step he took he left a deep hole in the ground. He was moving forward in an extremely violent manner. Most of the people behind him were disciples of top sects, such as Jianghu from the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect, Puppet Master from Mechanism City, and Wei Ruishi from the Nine Great Sects. They were getting closer and closer to Lei Haoyin. As long as they could catch up to Lei Haoyin, they would be able to snatch the Heavenly Thunderfire bead. But in that case they would immediately become enemies. So at this time they began to be wary of each other. Lei Haoyin was also aware of this. He suddenly stopped and did something crazy. He actually threw out the Heavenly Thunderfire bead. With his strength, the Heavenly Thunderfire bead shot into the distance like a meteor. Yanmu and others paused for a moment, and then they ignored Lei Haoyin and went straight to the Heavenly Thunderfire bead. In their view, their purpose was to get the Heavenly Thunderfire bead. Now that it was not in Lei Haoyin's hands, what was the point of continuing to chase him? What was more, the Heavenly Thunderfire bead could not fall into the hands of others, so they strangely bypassed Lei Haoyin and chased after the Heavenly Thunderfire bead. A bunch of idiots, Leng Shiqi said softly. Lei Haoyin also thought so. If those people didn't care about the Heavenly Thunderfire bead and forced Lei Haoyin to use the power of oneness of heaven and men first, then he would lose the qualification to compete for the Heavenly Thunderfire bead, then Lei Haoyin would really have no chance. But now Lei Haoyin was still standing here. At most, he just consumed some spiritual force, and it didn't even affect his combat effectiveness too much. Next, as long as he met up with the experts under him, he would still be the strongest party. Lei Haoyin also understood that the Heavenly Thunderfire bead would become the target of siege in anyone's hands. Instead of being besieged, it was better to let the others fight first and weaken their strength. Only the person who had the last laugh would be the winner. In the yellow mud swamp, Lei Haoyin, Lei Haoqing and Lei Haoyin were still supervising the battle. The three of them had joined forces to kill several people on Lei Haoyin's side. As long as they continued, they would eradicate Lei Haoyin's henchmen sooner or later. But they never expected that Lei Haoyin, who was filled with boundless killing intent, would actually come back. Lei Haoqing immediately said in shock, Why did you come back?" Lei Haoyin and Lei Haoyin looked back and saw no one. They all guessed that Lei Haoyin took the initiative to give up the Heavenly Thunderfire bead. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to come back alone. Lei Haoyin looked at the several corpses on the ground. Those were all his brothers who had gone through life and death with him. He roared, and tyrannical purple flames immediately rose around his body. This kind of flame soaked the sky. The strange thing was that this was clearly a flame, and it should be incomparably hot. However, everyone felt a pain of ice and fire intertwining. Looking carefully, those purple flames actually turned into the shape of ice crystals, resplendent and terrifying. Purple crystal frost flame. When did you possess a heavenly flame? You hid it so well. Lei Haoyin and the other two were all shocked. The big brother in front of them was able to hide from their intelligence network and secretly refine a heavenly flame. Under Lei Haoyin's rage, he used his extremely dense cultivation to unleash the purple crystal frost flame. With a wave of his hand, his might was unparalleled. Cold flames filled the sky, and in an instant 4 people were killed by him. Lei Haoqing's face turned ashen, because 3 of the 4 people were his men. His forces were originally the weakest, and this time he could be considered to have suffered a great loss. At the same time he was also shocked by Lei Haoyin's strength. Their strongest subordinates had all gone to chase after the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl, and none of them could stop Lei Haoyin for a moment. If this continued, Lei Haoyin's side would be able to suppress their 3 forces. However, Lei Haoyin and the others could only watch helplessly. None of the 3 of them had a strong cultivation talent. The strongest was Lei Haoyin, who was only at the spirit vein stage. He didn't even have the qualifications to interfere. The most important thing was that the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl wasn't here. What were they fighting for? Thus, the three of them shouted in tacit understanding, "Stop! All of you stop!" Hearing this, everyone retreated. They didn't want to fight Lei Haoyan head-on, or rather they didn't dare to. In this short period of time, a total of 6 people had died. Lei Haoyan's strength was too terrifying. Lei Haoyan also sneered and retracted his hand. "3 royal brothers, this is a good opportunity to eliminate me. Why aren't you fighting anymore?" Chapter 678. Lei Haoyan said in a deep voice, "Big brother, you are indeed very strong, more powerful than we expected, but the heavenly Thunderfire bead is not here. Our battle is meaningless, isn't it?" Lei Haoyan put away the purple crystal frost flame and said with his hands behind his back, "You are not stupid, but your subordinates are not smart enough. Guess who among those at the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm can get the heavenly Thunderfire bead? Or a few of them have died." As soon as he said this, Lei Haoqing and the others suddenly became pale. They could almost imagine what had happened, and they couldn't help but curse secretly. But at this moment, the strongest spirit cultivators in their hands were still fighting with each other, weakening each other's strength. And Lei Haoyan had joined up with his own people. Even if their joint strength was still far beyond Lei Haoyan's, it was impossible for them to join hands so easily. At the same time, they also had a hope in their hearts, that was, would their own people get the heavenly Thunderfire bead? So everyone had their own ideas, and then they rushed to the other battlefield with everyone. And the dozen people here had reached the white-hot stage. Looking from afar, one could see the sword light and the roaring sound of 10 miles. Among the thousands of people present, Yen Mu of the Illusory Sword Sect, Wei Ruishi of the Bright Mirror Palace, and the Puppet Master of the Mechanical City were the most powerful. Yen Mu held a 7th-level spirit sword, and there was a dreamy sword light flashing when he waved his hand. Wei Ruishi was a spirit cultivator, and there were countless translucent mirrors condensed by astral wind around him, suppressing the 3 of them with his own strength. And the Puppet Master of the Mechanical City followed Lei Haoyan, the 13th Prince. The Puppet Master controlled 2 huge bronze puppets at the same time. Not only was he powerful, but he was also invulnerable. And there were all kinds of strange abilities which made everyone feel very tricky. When Lei Haoyan and the others arrived here, several people from each side had died. Seeing their arrival, Wei Ruishi quickly formed a seal, and in an instant the countless mirrors shattered with a loud bang. Fragments swept in all directions and everyone quickly retreated to block them. Wei Ruishi stretched out his hand, and the Gang Chi turned into a big hand and grabbed the heavenly Thunderfire bead. The expressions of the other princes and their subordinates immediately changed. Without another word, they attacked Wei Ruishi and Lei Haoyan's group. Wei Ruishi's expression also darkened. He thought that he was very strong, but he was definitely not as freakish as Lei Haoyan. He shouted loudly, "Set up the formation." Hearing this, Lei Haoyan's men immediately revealed a strange booth. It seemed chaotic, but there was a hidden rhythm. The remaining dozen people of Lei Haoyan were connected with each other. They even blocked the joint attack of more than 30 masters of Gang Spirit Realm. Lei Haoyan was overjoyed. "Let's go. We have less than 2 hours left. When I ascend the throne, all of you will be feudal officials." Wei Ruishi and the others were shocked. Why did they follow Lei Haoyan? It was all for the sake of obtaining more resources. However, none of them expected that one of the people in the formation would suddenly throw a punch at the person next to him. The heavy spirit highland caused the spirit cultivator to spit out a mouthful of blood and was seriously injured. At the same time, the puppet master of the mechanical city controlled 2 puppets to dash around like a meat tank, breaking up their formation. Lei Haoyan, Wei Ruishi and the others were all shocked. The puppet master himself shuttled through the crowd like a fish. When Wei Ruishi was not paying attention, he grabbed the heavenly Thunderfire bead. "Chen Haosi, how dare you betray me?" Lei Haoyan gnashed his teeth and said. The one who attacked just now, Chen Haosi, smiled and said, "Your Highness, I am not your man. How can I betray you?" The puppet master grabbed the heavenly Thunderfire bead and handed it to Lei Haoyan, the 13th Prince. Lei Haoyan held the heavenly Thunderfire bead in his hand openly and said, "The heavenly Thunderfire bead is in my hand. If you want to take it away, it's very simple. Just kill me." When he said this, everyone secretly felt that it was not good. It was true that these princes came to fight for the heavenly Thunderfire bead. Many followers also fought with each other, but they never thought of killing the princes. Lei Haoyan's cultivation was only in the spiritual pulse realm. If they really wanted to kill him, it was too easy. But the problem was that Lei Haoyun just stood there and let them kill him. Who dared to kill him? Just now they chased Lei Haoyun not to kill him but to force him out of the air sky. Everyone had to admire Lei Haoyun's courage and shrewdness. Lei Haoyun said, 13th brother, it's true that no one here dares to kill you but we can kill your followers. When you're all alone, I have 100 ways to force you to hand over the heavenly thunderfire pearl. Immediately, Lei Haoyun waved his arm and the purple crystal frost flame rushed to the puppet master. The others' eyes also lit up. They immediately changed their target and wanted to kill Lei Haoyun's followers. The puppet master gave Lei Haoyun a meaningful glance, and a series of cracking sounds could be heard from Lei Haoyun's body. Everyone turned their heads to look, and it turned out that Lei Haoyun's body was actually covered with a puppet shell. This puppet had 8 legs. Lei Haoyun poured his spiritual energy into it, and then he turned into a shadow and fled quickly. His speed was even faster than the late stage of the gang spirit realm. Lei Haoyun couldn't help but be surprised. It turned out that Lei Haoyun had prepared for everything. Now there was not much time left. If Lei Haoyun really escaped, it would be useless to kill all his followers. Go after him. Lei Haoyun, Lei Haoran, and Lei Haoqing shouted in unison. Then Wei Ruoxi's body seemed to turn into a golden winged rock that was fighting in the 9th heaven. With a leap he was hundreds of feet away. He pointed between his eyebrows, and a cyan inverted triangle pattern appeared on his forehead. In the air in front of him, a triangular domain with a radius of thousands of feet was projected, in which strong wind was blowing and tearing the world apart. Lei Haoyun's puppet was very fast, but its defensive power was not very strong. In an instant, several of its legs were broken, and its speed was greatly reduced. Wei Ruoxi didn't dare to kill Lei Haoyun, so he had to stop. But he didn't expect that Lei Haoyun turned into flowing fire, swept past Wei Ruoxi, and chopped down with his hand. The purple crystal saber light directly smashed Lei Haoyun's puppet. Moreover, he controlled his spiritual energy so well that Lei Haoyun only suffered some superficial wounds. However, the power of the purple crystal cold flame also imprisoned Lei Haoyun. Lei Haoyun came to Lei Haoyun and took back the heavenly thunderfire bead in his unwilling eyes. 13th brother, I have to thank you. You provided me with a very good method. Lei Haoyun said sarcastically, everyone listen to my order. Try your best to stop everyone. Today the heavenly thunderfire bead will be mine. Yes. Then Lei Haoyun ignored Lei Haoyun and fled straight to the distance. The situation had returned to the original situation. The difference was that the strength of Lei Haoyun and the other 2 parties was greatly reduced, and there was not much time left. Chapter 679. Most importantly, there were not many people who still had the strength to chase after Lei Haoyun. At most, there were only 5 or 6 people. Even if they did chase after Lei Haoyun, would they be able to stop him? At that time they would not be able to stop him. Instead they would be killed. The other 3 princes were also filled with hatred. At this moment, they finally understood that their own strength was the most important thing. It was also the most secure thing. If they also had the strength of one with the heavens, they would not have allowed Lei Haoyun to be so arrogant. But now that Lei Haoyun had escaped with the heavenly thunderfire pearl, they could not do anything. Even if they killed all of Lei Haoyun's subordinates, what was the use? Once Lei Haoyun became the crown prince or even the emperor, what awaited them would be death. However, the next scene was something that no one had expected. Just as Lei Haoyun felt that victory was in his grasp, and Lei Haoran and the others were filled with despair, an unexpected person suddenly made a move. Demonic chi filled the sky as the shadow of a demonic god appeared. A blood-stained demonic sword slashed down, causing countless ghosts to howl. It was as if hell had appeared. Demonic flash epiphyllum. At the same time, a sword formed in the void. Thousands of sword chi of absolute star shot out and surrounded everyone. Sword chi overflowed and the sound of swords whistled. Lei Haoyun was shocked. There was actually such an expert in void sky? Facing the demonic flash epiphyllum, even Lei Haoyun felt that he could not block it. Unless he used the strength of one with the heavens, he would lose the right to compete. Void sky was about to open. With the heavenly thunderfire pearl in his hand, he could not fall at the last moment. The purple crystal frost flame filled the sky and formed a huge purple crystal arrow that shot towards the hellish sword light. The remaining people were also in a hurry to block the sword chi of absolute star. They were all stunned because they recognized the person who had made the move. The deputy general of the Dark Thunder Guards, Lu Xingji. They were stunned not only because of Leng Shiqi's strength, but also because of his identity. The Dark Thunder Guards were directly under Lei Qingjun. Logically speaking, they should not and could not participate in the fight between factions. In other words, they had to remain neutral. Then why was he fighting for the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl? Could it be that he had secretly sided with one of the princes? He was waiting for the final critical moment to make his move. While everyone was puzzled, Leng Shiqi and Lei Haoyan's attacks had already collided. The Hell Devil Saber and the Amethyst Arrow collided fiercely. In an instant, the horrible spiritual power swept out. Even the masters of Gang Spirit Realm not far away had to retreat quickly. Chapter 680. In the palace courtyard, hundreds of figures bathed in golden light appeared. These were the people sent out from Air Scar Sky. What made people sigh was that 3 days ago more than 200 people went in, but when they came out only half of them were left. Some of the people who died accidentally died in dangerous places, some of the princes died fighting with each other, and most of them died at the hands of Leng Shiqi. Those who had been watching the battle outside also looked over. Most of them did not look too good. They had all seen their own people die in Air Scar Sky. This time, it could be said that all the forces had people die, including the Dark Thunder Guards and the Discipline Commission. As for Li Jueqing, he was the one with the worst expression. When he saw Li Gang and Gong Lianghui die, he knew that the assassination of Leng Shiqi had failed again. Especially when he saw Leng Shiqi appear intact with his own eyes, he wanted to rush up and tear him to pieces. At the same time, he was also surprised and doubtful. He could not understand how Leng Shiqi escaped the siege of dozens of Gang Spirit Realm masters. Even Li Juge and Li family's fourth uncle could not do anything to him with the spiritual attachment. No one paid attention to Li Jueqing. They were most concerned about who got the Heavenly Thunderfire bead. Everyone looked at Lei Haoyan and the other 3 princes, but the 4 princes' faces were as dark as the bottom of a pot. They did not look like they got the Heavenly Thunderfire bead. This puzzled everyone. At the same time, they were very curious about what happened in Air Scar Sky, because it was difficult for them to speculate the situation inside from the jade plates outside. The 4 princes all looked at Leng Shiqi with hatred. Many people also noticed this. While they were puzzled, Leng Shiqi took out a bead from his mustard bracelet. It was the Heavenly Thunderfire bead. Everyone's eyes began to slowly widen. The Heavenly Thunderfire bead was not in the hands of any of the princes, but in the hands of Leng Shiqi. What was going on? Didn't the Dark Thunder Guards not participate in the battle for the throne? Or did this Lu Xingji ignore the rules of the Dark Thunder Guards? They had all guessed that any prince could obtain the Heavenly Thunderfire bead. Even Lei Haoqing had a chance. However, no one had ever thought that the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl would be taken away by an outsider. Eunuch Du said, "Silence." The crowd quieted down immediately. They wanted to see how Lei Qingjun would deal with this matter. Eunuch Du continued, "The Heavenly Thunderfire bead was not obtained by a certain prince, but by the Deputy Chief of the Dark Thunder Guards, Lord Lu. Now may I ask Lord Lu, which prince do you support?" The 4 princes who were glaring angrily at Leng Shiqi now looked over with longing in their eyes. They still had a glimmer of hope. As for the others, their eyes were about to pop out. In the end, the Crown Prince would be decided by a Deputy Director of the Dark Thunder Guards. It could also be said that the Leng Shiqi would decide the future emperor. So how would he choose? Eunuch Gao's eyes flashed. He thought to himself, this brat is really daring. He dares to play with the 4 princes. It seems that he has guessed His Majesty's intention. Delta Origi, Yushu and Xiong Ming were people who knew Leng Shiqi better. They knew that he would not give the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl to any of the princes. Otherwise, he would have violated the taboo of the Dark Thunder Guards. At this moment, everyone's eyes were gathered on Leng Shiqi. However, he smiled and walked to Lei Qingjun with the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl in his hands. "I am a subject of the Heavenly Thunderfire dynasty. Who should be given the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl and who should ascend to the throne is naturally up to His Majesty." Everyone present was stunned. What did Leng Shiqi mean? Was he going to offend all the princes? However, there were also people who quickly reacted and secretly praised Leng Shiqi for his intelligence. In fact, if he gave the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl to any of the princes, it meant that he would no longer remain neutral. No matter what would happen in the future, he would not be able to get past Lei Qingjun first. On the contrary, if he gave the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl to Lei Qingjun, he would be greatly appreciated by His Majesty. Lei Haoyan and the others' faces darkened. They began to curse Leng Shiqi in their hearts. "You don't want the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl. Why don't you give it to them?" However, Lei Qingjun suddenly laughed. This made everyone's hearts tighten. They immediately turned their attention to him. Lei Qingjun stood up. To their surprise, he did not care about who the heavenly thunderfire pearl belonged to. Instead, he said something to Eunuch Du. Then Eunuch Du picked up a huge plate. On it were plates of different colors. He respectfully held them in front of Lei Qingjun. Everyone was puzzled. They also saw that the plates on the plate were divided into 3 colors. There were only 3 gold plates at the top. Next were silver plates. There were more than 30 of them. Below that were black plates. There were the most of them. There were 50 to 60 of them. Only then did he say, "Give it to me." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi stepped forward and presented the heavenly thunderfire pearl. Lei Qingjun held the heavenly thunderfire pearl. His face was expressionless. "You have done well. Thank you, Your Majesty." Leng Shiqi lowered his head. "You can leave now. I will not treat you unfairly." This humble subject obeys. Leng Shiqi returned to Eunuch Gao's side. Lei Qingjun turned his head and asked the princes, "You all want it, don't you?" Lei Haoyin and the other princes lowered their heads. They still did not understand Lei Qingjun's meaning. However, they could tell that there were other secrets and motives behind this crown prince battle. They did not dare to say anything. However, they were all shouting in their hearts. Of course they wanted it. Lei Qingjun looked at them. How could he not know what they were thinking? He laughed coldly and said, "I cannot sit on the throne for the rest of my life. On the contrary, I do not have much time left. This throne will be yours sooner or later." "This son does not dare," Lei Haoqing said respectfully. "You do not dare?" Lei Qingjun's expression was one of disappointment. "What a good you do not dare. I'm not dead yet, but all of you are already impatient. The Thousand Illusions Sword Sect, the Bright Mirror Palace and the Mechanical City. You all are quite cunning. All of these top sects are willing to submit to you. If I live for a few more years, you will be able to bring your own forces into the palace, right?" The 4 princes were immediately covered in cold sweat. They knelt down one after another. Their faces were pale and they were sweating profusely. They shouted in unison, "This son does not dare." At this moment they finally understood. Opening Void Scar Sky wasn't to choose a successor. Their father wanted to use his birthday banquet as an opportunity to gather all the sects in the world. He wanted to see which sects would participate in the battle for the throne. This birthday banquet was just a trap from beginning to end. Chapter 681. As one of the 3 great dynasties, the Thunderfire dynasty was not the most fearful of the Starfall dynasty and the Northern Wei dynasty. Even though the Starfall dynasty was very powerful, they were still separated by the 6 countries of the western region. No matter which side wanted to attack the other side, they would be detected in advance. Furthermore, the Thunderfire dynasty was not much weaker than the Starfall dynasty. As long as the people of the Starfall dynasty did not go crazy, they would not easily attack the Thunderfire dynasty. To the Thunderfire dynasty, the biggest hidden danger came from the inside, which was the spirit cultivator sects. Especially the top and first-rate sects. These sects had been rooted for hundreds and thousands of years. They had a boundless foundation and were powerful. Some of them had even become countries within countries. Every one of them was a restless time bomb. Ever since the establishment of the Thunderfire dynasty, they had been using all kinds of methods to suppress the spirit cultivator sects. Thus, the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards appeared, one in the open and one in the dark. From then on, the Thunderfire dynasty and the spirit cultivator sects entered a rare period of peace. However, this was not a long-term plan because there were already many sects that were dissatisfied with the existence of the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards. Thus, the biggest problem in front of Lei Qingjun was how to deal with these spirit cultivator sects. His lifespan was about to end, and he had been a mediocre ruler for his entire life. However, he was unwilling. Lei Qingjun wanted to pave a path for his descendants before he died. He wanted to do something crazy before he died. Thus, there was this birthday banquet and the so-called Crown Prince competition. He used the name of the birthday banquet to purposely gather all the top and first-rate sects in the Thunderfire dynasty in the imperial capital. Then he secretly released the news that he would open the Crown Prince competition in the Void Scar Sky. He wanted to give the princes a chance to rope in the spirit cultivator sects. It also gave them a chance to bribe the Duke's manor, General's manor, and the ministers in the imperial capital. Once a prince successfully roped in a spirit cultivator sect, in Lei Qingjun's heart, that person would no longer have any fate with the throne. As for the sects and families that relied on the princes, they were all recorded and placed in front of Lei Qingjun. Lei Qingjun flipped the plate over, and the various colored plates scattered on the ground. Everyone finally saw what was on the plate. Behind the 3 golden plates were the top sects, Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect, Bright Mirror Palace and Mechanical City. The silver plates belong to the first-rate sects, while the black plates belong to the various marquis residences and generals' residences. No one dared to make a sound. Lei Haoyin and the other three princes had completely lost their usual composure. They were all scared out of their wits. Lei Qingjun took out a palm-sized golden seal. This was the imperial jade seal that symbolized the highest authority of the Thunderfire dynasty. With a weak but shocking voice he said, "Announce the imperial decree. Annihilate the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect, Bright Mirror Palace, Mechanical City, Flying Frost Villa, Silver Hoop Gang, confiscate Duke Qin's mansion, Muyun Marquis Mansion, General Jinbei's mansion. Leave no one alive." Every time he said a name, everyone's heart trembled violently. They couldn't even believe their ears. They also couldn't believe that the person who said this was the Emperor of the Middle, Lei Qingjun. After Lei Qingjun finished speaking, the clumsy king knelt on one knee and said, "I accept the order. The 12 armies have already set off for the 3 top sections. The experts of the Imperial Hall of Worship have also been teleported there. The Imperial Guards have already prepared. The Marquis's mansions can all be killed by tonight." Perhaps it was an illusion, but after the clumsy king finished speaking, there seemed to be waves of miserable cries coming from outside the palace, causing everyone to tremble. Leng Shiqi was also secretly sweating. Fortunately, he didn't auction off the Thunderfire Pearl. Otherwise he would have been a corpse by now. He had already guessed that Lei Qingjun would use this opportunity to cause trouble for the spirit cultivator sects, but he didn't expect Lei Qingjun to be this crazy. What was Lei Qingjun doing? He wanted to become enemies with all the spirit cultivator sects in the Thunderfire dynasty. Lei Qingjun could no longer be described as crazy. He had already gone mad. Lei Qingjun, who had been a conservative ruler all his life, had such a bold and crazy determination before his death. It was foreseeable that in the next period of time, an unprecedented bloodbath would occur in the imperial capital and the Thunderflame dynasty. Chapter 682. After arranging everything, Lei Qingjun coldly glanced at the 4 princes, causing them to feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. "Announce the decree, summon the slaughtering king, Hui King, and the other princes back to the capital." Everyone who had yet to recover from their shock sucked in a breath of cold air. Lei Haoyin and the others felt their vision darken and almost fainted. They all knew that from this moment on, the position of crown prince had no fate with them. Lei Qingjun had more than 10 princes under him, and the 4 of them were the strongest. As for the other princes, some had already given up and only knew how to recite poems and make merry. Some of them were secretly supporting one of them in order to protect the path to success. There were also some who were chased out of the capital early on. These people were also the first batch of people to be eliminated. Unexpectedly, they benefited from this disaster and once again entered Lei Qingjun's sight. As for Lei Qingjun, he could be considered to have seen through it. Actually, it did not matter who inherited the throne as long as it was not an incapable ruler. He was also confident that the pure land he had created for his descendants would be enough for them to enjoy for a few lifetimes. Furthermore, as long as there was the imperial consecration hall, even if the one sitting on the throne was a puppet emperor, it did not matter. After doing all this, Lei Qingjun returned to the palace, leaving behind a group of people who were trapped in the array and watched by 8 Sky Origin stage experts. The reason why he had to watch them was to prevent the news from spreading. This way he could catch those spirit cultivator sects unprepared. The ones who were more embarrassed were the people from the Starfall dynasty's diplomatic group. They came to the Thunderflame dynasty's imperial capital with various goals, but now it seemed that they were all going to be wasted. To the Starfall dynasty and Northern Wei dynasty, Lei Qingjun's actions were also greatly out of their expectations. They could not imagine that Lei Qingjun would do such a crazy thing. As for the people from the 6 kingdoms of the western region, they were all scared out of their wits. What made them feel awkward was that they couldn't leave either. They could only wait until everything was settled. If it was any other time, Ying Yuan would definitely jump out and accuse him. However, at this time he sat there abnormally obediently. Because no one could be sure that Lei Qingjun would not do something even crazier. Of course, not everyone had to stay here. For example, the people from the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards were let go because they also had a mission. If the Thunderfire dynasty wanted to wipe out all the sects with lightning speed, the Discipline Commission and the Dark Lightning Guards would be needed. Leng Shiqi followed Eunuch Gao back to the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards, but he still couldn't calm down. Eunuch Gao also sighed and said, We only heard a few words from His Majesty before, and knew that His Majesty would make a big move. However, Your Majesty actually made such a shocking move. If Your Majesty had made this decision earlier, the Thunderflame dynasty would definitely have improved. Then he changed the topic. Tell me, what did you do in Void Scar Sky Capital? Why is the Heavenly Thunderfire Orb in your hands? Lung Shichi told him about how he stole the Heavenly Thunderfire Orb at the last moment. At that time there were many people, so he couldn't hide it. As for how he used the Earth Chaos Formation to kill the 37 Spirit Astral Realm cultivators, he didn't say it. He didn't want Eunuch Gao to know his true strength. And he was sure that Li Jucheng would definitely help him keep it a secret. Thinking of Li Jucheng, Lung Shichi's killing intent exploded. It was time to deal with this huge hidden danger. After listening to Lung Shichi's story, Eunuch Gao continued to ask. There was a period of time in Void Scar Sky where about 40 spirit cultivators died. Do you know the reason? Disciple remembers that at that time, everyone was fighting for the Heavenly Thunderfire Orb in the Yellow Mud Swamp. Disciple didn't pay attention to others, so I don't know. Lung Shichi confirmed that everyone at that time was dead and there would be no survivors. He said these words calmly in his heart. Eunuch Gao had been secretly observing the subtle expressions on Lung Shichi's face, but so far he hadn't seen any flaws. He asked the third question. Why did you steal the Heavenly Thunderfire Orb? Aren't you afraid of offending all the princes? Lung Shichi smiled at this time and said, Master, before His Majesty's birthday banquet, I heard that His Majesty was going to use Void Scar Sky as the trial ground to choose the crown prince. At that time I had been puzzled. Later, in Void Scar Sky, I had some contact with the 4 princes and felt that it wasn't simple. In my humble opinion, His Majesty didn't plan to choose the crown prince this time, but was preparing to test the next target. In addition, to be honest, I am also ambitious. When he said the last word, Eunuch Gao suddenly laughed. Ah, good ambition. Eunuch Gao stood up and said, Lu Xingji, I know that you have a lot of secrets. You are very smart and ambitious. I don't care about these. On the contrary, the stronger you are, the more power you have, and the more help you will be to our family. This time you saw through it very clearly and did well. His Majesty said that he wouldn't mistreat you. You will be rewarded sooner or later. However, the Dark Thunder Guards also have a very important mission to do, so I need you to run around again. Master, please instruct me. Lung Shichi cupped his hands and said. Eunuch Gao took out 3 golden tablets and lined them up in front of Lung Shichi. He said, These are the 3 top sects that the Thunderfire dynasty is going to destroy. However, it's easier said than done to destroy the top sections. Therefore, the Dark Thunder Guards have to be prepared. You can choose one. Of course, you don't have to be too worried. The Dark Thunder Guards aren't the main force. They are only in charge of intelligence and cleaning. However, this is a great contribution. Lung Shichi nodded secretly. Every top sect was a thorn in the side of the Thunderfire dynasty. It was not easy for Lei Qingjun to destroy 3 top sects this time. He also understood that the main force to destroy the top sects was the combat army and the Imperial Hall of Worship. It was good for him to get some credit. The 3 top sects were the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, the Bright Mirror Palace and the Mechanical City. Lung Shichi made his choice after a slight hesitation. It was the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. First of all, the Thousand Illusion Sword sect was the weakest among the top sections. Over the years, the Thousand Illusion Sword sect had been on the decline. There was only one Sky Origin Realm expert left in the sect. This person's chi and blood had been declining for a long time. He did not appear for many years in order to maintain his vitality. Since he was going to get some credit, of course he had to pick a soft persimmon. In addition, he had some enmity with the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. He had never forgotten that the Gang Spirit Realm expert of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect had almost killed him in the South Divine Peak of Mukin Commandery. It was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Now the opportunity had finally come. Finally, he was also very interested in the cultivation method of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. The move Dazzling Flowers was inspired by the abandoned disciple of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, Ozu, to complete the fusion. Moreover, the current chaotic blossom Dazzling Eyes was a bit useless to him. If he could obtain the inheritance of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, he might be able to comprehend it by analogy and increase the power of this move to the next level. Thinking of Ozu, Lung Shichi was a little curious about Ozu's current cultivation and where he had gone. After all, Ozu had another part of the inheritance of the Divine Illusion Palace. Lung Shichi was also very envious. Lung Shichi immediately said, I want to go to Pinghui Commandery to destroy the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. Well, since you have made your choice, I will do as you say. Speaking of this, Eunuch Gao seemed to have thought of something. By the way, this time, in order to catch them off guard, you can't take the people from the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters. However, you can dispatch all the Dark Thunder Guards in Pinghui Commandery at will. The East Guarding Thunder Flame Army, which is responsible for dealing with the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, is also moving secretly. They will arrive in Pinghui Commandery in 4 or 5 days. You can set off in 3 days. This time there will be an expert from the Imperial Hall of Worship with you. Speaking of which, this person has a relationship with you. Well, you must be tired after coming out of Air Scar Sky. Go and rest first. I will take my leave. Lung Shiqi turned and left. He didn't care too much about who the expert with him was, because before going to Pinghui Commandery, he had something more important to do. Chapter 683. At night, Lung Shiqi sat alone in the secret cultivation room of Xingji Pavilion. He was playing with a green petal in his hand, and his eyes flashed with a cold light from time to time. In the end, he left the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards without anyone noticing. Within the curtain garden of the imperial capital, the two protagonists of the Phoenix stage who had once shaken the world had now become the most popular stars of the curtain garden. Hua Meiren was in the middle of an indifferent conversation with a guest. Suddenly his expression changed slightly. Soon after, an invisible breeze blew by. His body had already left, leaving behind only an empty skin bag in the room. The other extremely seductive Miss Nine Leave also spat out a mouthful of demonic qi. The eyes of the guests in the room immediately blurred, and their expressions became fluttering. She had already turned into a purple light and disappeared into the horizon. After Li Jucheng of the Dark Thunder Guards heard Li Jugu and Li family's fourth uncle's report, he was so angry that he wanted to tear down the supplies on the spot. Little Lu Xingji, you've gone too far. Li Juji's spirit body was killed, and he suffered a heavy backlash. Not only did his cultivation regress, but he also lost some of his lifespan. When he found out that all the people who went to assassinate him were dead, he was shocked and angry. He said hatefully, that Lu Xingji is too terrifying. We can't let him grow any longer. Otherwise, it won't be long before he becomes our great enemy. Li family's fourth uncle also agreed. At that time I knew that I couldn't kill him, so I wanted to force out his true trump card. In the end, I only forced out the fire seed of the pure gold earth dragon flame. What a pity. I'm sure he has other trump cards. Before we find out, we can't act rashly. Li Juqing began to pace back and forth. He suddenly asked a strange question. Do you think Supervisor Gao knows Lu Xingji's true strength? Li Jugu and Li family's fourth uncle revealed a trace of doubt at the same time. Eunuch Gao was his master, how could he not know his strength? Could it be that Li Juqing wanted to start with Eunuch Gao? That was not realistic. Li Juqing sneered, that Lu Xingji can kill so many spirit cultivators, but don't forget, which one of them doesn't have a background? Among them are the Dark Thunder Guards and the Discipline Commission. If others knew that they were all killed by Lu Xingji, what would the consequences be? Then he will definitely die. Li Juich continued, not to mention those top sects and first-class sects, the crime of killing his comrades is enough for him to die several times. However, Li family's fourth uncle shook his head and said, not necessarily. Lu Xingji is different now. He directly received His Majesty's recognition. Even if he committed a heinous crime, he might not necessarily die. Moreover, as long as Lu Xingji refuses to admit it, there's nothing we can do because we can't testify, otherwise we'll expose ourselves. The gloominess on Li Jucheng's face became even more obvious. If it really doesn't work, I'll do it myself. No. Li Jugu and fourth uncle denied at the same time. To the Li family, Li Jueching was the true backbone. Anything could happen to anyone in the Li family except him. Moreover, Li Jueching's identity was too sensitive. Once he was caught, he would be put at a disadvantage. At this moment, Li Jueching's expression changed. He took out a round ball from his mustard seed bracelet. Spiritual light flashed on it and formed a line of words. He sneered and said, Lu Xingji left the city and went in the direction of Pinghui County. This is a good opportunity. Li family's fourth uncle was the calmest. He said, Lu Xingji just returned from the Imperial Palace and then left in a hurry. Could there be something fishy about this? What could be fishy about this? Li Jueching refuted. Lu Xingji went to Pinghui County to participate in the destruction of the Thousand Illusory Sword sect and gain some merit. When he completely leaves the imperial capital, it will be the time of his death. I want to personally meet this person who can't be killed time and time again. What kind of ability does he have? Fourth uncle wanted to persuade him, but Li Jueqing waved his hand and said, I've made up my mind. You guys rest well. I'll be back soon. Outside the imperial capital, Leng Shiqi traveled day and night. By the night of the second day, he had completely left the imperial capital. From this moment on, he kept the system map and the supercilious eye open, just to wait for someone. Leng Shiqi, who was running, suddenly stopped in his tracks. He looked around and said loudly, Who is this expert? Please show yourself. You're quite vigilant. Li Jueqing walked out from the darkness and praised him. Manager Li? Leng Shiqi pretended to be surprised. Li Jueqing laughed coldly. What, are you surprised? You're here to kill me, right? That's right. Li Jueqing said bluntly, Don't worry. You're quite a character. I'll leave your corpse intact. After saying that, Li Jueqing formed a seal with his hands and softly said, Mountain Guard. In an instant, the earth's spiritual energy in the world swarmed over and tore a huge hole in the night sky. The shadow of a towering mountain slowly descended, and the dense power of the earth suppressed everything. The earth within a radius of more than 10 miles cracked, and the weaker creatures were directly suppressed to death. The powerful cultivation of the late stage of oneness of heaven and men was vividly displayed by Li Jueqing. Leng Shiqi frowned. Li Jueqing's move didn't look like a spiritual skill, let alone an ordinary one. He couldn't see through it. Moreover, he had never seen such a powerful spiritual skill in his life. It seemed that it was second only to Huang Baixing's in the Phantom Spirit secret realm. If it were any other kind of attack, he might be in a hurry. But he was not afraid of the earth element at all. Leng Shiqi raised his hands to the sky, and a strange force spread out. The falling speed of the towering mountain suddenly stopped, and then it was suspended in the air. He was at the middle stage of Gang Spirit realm, and he withstood Li Jueqing's attack. Li Jueqing's eyes narrowed. He thought that the mountain guard would be enough to seriously injure Leng Shiqi, but he found that he couldn't control the mountain guard. It was a very strange feeling. It was as if you were holding a knife, but the knife didn't listen to your command. What the hell is going on? Li Jueqing was puzzled. He began to understand why he couldn't kill Leng Shiqi several times. It was because he never knew how many trump cards he had hidden. Leng Shiqi used the power of the earth, but it was not the law of heaven and earth. So what he could do now was to block the mountain guard. This was enough for him because Li Jueqing had been stalled by him. Just at the moment when they were in a stalemate, a vision suddenly appeared. In the dark night, the clouds parted and the moon was bright. The faint moonlight sprinkled down, and the flowing flowers and flying moon were beautiful. A flying flower and flowing light suddenly appeared. The spiritual power of heaven and earth within dozens of miles shook violently, and the mountain in the sky showed signs of collapsing. The flowing light was gorgeous and pointed directly at Li Jueqing's back. The power contained in it twisted the air. It was Hua Luiyue, one of the 9 nether blood cloak killers of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Chapter 684. Li Jueqing was shocked. There was actually an expert hiding here. An expert who made him feel a great threat of death. The colorful stream of light shot from behind. Li Jueqing no longer competed with Leng Shiqi. He hurriedly turned around and formed a strange seal with his hands. Immediately after, rays of light shone and a tall divine shadow condensed. It looked similar to Li Jueqing. That divine shadow was the Li family's ancestor. Strangely, there were all kinds of different weapons floating around the figure. There were all kinds of sabers, spears, swords, and halberds. Li Jueqing reached out and held the saber. The saber's shadow directly shattered, and the astral wind and saber chi exploded. It was everywhere in the sky and earth, forming a sharp saber array. The rise of the Dark Thunder Guard's Li family was quite inspirational. In fact, the Li family did not have any family martial arts, nor did they have a strong background. 100 years ago, the Li family's ancestors' talent was astonishing. After entering the Dark Thunder Guard, he integrated dozens and hundreds of cultivation methods and spirit skills together. It could be said that he was all-encompassing. He alone relied on his humble background to sit in the position of commander of the Dark Thunder Guard. From then on, the Li family began to take root in the Dark Thunder Guard. Li Jueqing also inherited the Li family's ancestors' cultivation system. However, the saber array seemed terrifying, and even an expert who had just entered the unity of heaven and man realm would be seriously injured in an instant. However, it was easily penetrated by the colorful stream of light. It did not even have the slightest effect of blocking it. Even though Li Juqing knew that the stream of light was extremely strong, his heart sank when he saw that his saber array was useless. He spread out his arms and all the weapons around him shattered. Above the sky, a huge sword shadow that reached the heavens and the earth came crashing down. At the same time, different weapons appeared in all directions. Each of them was dozens of feet in size. The spiritual energy in the sky also became violent, pressing down on the colorful stream of light from all angles. A series of clanging sounds resounded through the sky. If there was a spirit cultivator below the fourth realm of heaven being nearby, they would probably be shocked to death by this sound. One by one, the shadows of the weapons that could shake the heavens were shattered. Every time one was shattered, the space would violently twitch and the colorful stream of light would dim a little. When all the divine weapons were broken, the power of the stream of light was already less than half. Even so, Li Jueqing was still incomparably fearful of its power. Wind come? He let out a low roar. Suddenly, the endless spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered into a storm of blades that swept out hundreds of feet. Lung Shiqi narrowed his eyes. The range of the wind blade was too large. He retreated and quietly concealed himself. At the same time, he could not help but be shocked by Hua Luiyue's strength. Not long ago, when he had met Hua Luiyue, he had asked Hua Luiyue if she had the confidence to kill Li Jueqing. Hua Luiyue only said a short sentence: "You can win but you can't kill." Hua Luiyue was the leader of the 9 underworld blood cloak assassins. His strength was unquestionable. Li Juqing was also one of the Dark Thunder Guard's 4 great chiefs. His cultivation was already stronger than the late stage of the Unity of Heaven realm. He could be considered to be at the peak of the Unity of Heaven realm. Hua Luiyue could win with a sneak attack and injure Li Jueqing, but it was impossible to kill him directly. Therefore, Lung Shiqi did not underestimate Li Jueqing and was fully prepared. Just as Li Jueqing's wind array was killing the colorful flowing light, a ray of purple light suddenly shone in the night sky. A majestic demonic power appeared. Countless purple light rays accurately cut off each of Li Jueqing's wind blades. In Li Jueqing's aghast expression, the colorful flowing light finally hit Li Jueqing. Suddenly, the divine shadow around Li Jueqing twisted and then broke into spots of light. Li Jueqing's body was directly penetrated by the colorful flowing light. Long streaks of blood were seen in the air as he fell to the ground in a sorry state. He stared in horror. At this moment there was a big hole in his chest. Logically speaking, he should be dead. However, there was something like a blood cocoon slowly wriggling in his chest. Li Jueqing's hands trembled slightly. If he did not have this life-saving method, he would have died just now. Tonight was supposed to be his hunting time. How could he have thought that he would become the prey? Moreover, he did not know who attacked him secretly. And the one who attacked was Nine Leave. It was Nine Leave who had recovered to a rank 6 demonic beast. When Lung Shiqi met Nine Leave last time, Nine Leave was already about to advance to rank 6. At that time, Lung Shiqi paid a large amount of intermediate advancement pills in exchange for Nine Leave to attack for him once. Nine Leave was once a rank 7 great demonic beast. Even if he had only recovered to rank 6, he could still crush Li Jueqing in a one-on-one fight. Moreover, it was Hua Luiyue who attacked first. The sky full of purple light intertwined with each other. A giant scorpion phantom that was hundreds of feet tall appeared. The soaring demonic aura even squeezed out the heaven and earth spirit chi. The giant scorpion phantom's huge eyes were a miserable green color. Waves of soul waves cleansed and attacked Li Jueqing's spiritual space. Demonic, rank 7 great demonic beast? Li Jueqing was in disbelief. Only rank 7 great demonic beasts could use this kind of magical power. However, if a rank 7 great demonic beast came to kill him, he might not even be able to withstand one move. Then what level was this demonic beast? More importantly, when had such a powerful demonic beast run so close to the imperial city, and even ambush him here? At this moment he seemed to have understood. He finally understood why he had failed to assassinate Lung Shiqi time and time again. It turned out that there were 2 such powerful experts by Lung Shiqi's side. Lu Xingji has been hiding his strength all this time. He wants to lure me out. Li Jueqing seemed to have figured it out, but it was too late. Of course, he would not surrender without a fight. Facing Nine Leaves' soul attack, he was not a spiritual caster. His spiritual power could only be said to be average, so he had no ability to resist at all. Suddenly, there was a sharp pain in his brain as if it was being torn apart. However, he endured the pain because he knew that once he lost control of his mind, there would be no hope of survival. He used all his strength to take out a blood-colored bead from his mustard seed bracelet. A complicated look flashed across his eyes. Finally he crushed it. The next moment, bits of blood-colored light scattered. The blood-colored light looked very faint and did not seem to be very powerful, but it condensed into a blood cocoon that protected Li Jueqing. Even Nine Leaves' soul attack could not penetrate the blood cocoon. Soon after, a blurry figure floated above the blood cocoon. He slowly opened his eyes and said in an extremely ancient and slightly ethereal voice, "It's still come to this. The Li family's disaster has still come." He looked up at Nine Leaves' demonic body and glanced at Hua Luiyue and Leng Shiqi who were hiding. The Nether Blood Cloak assassin of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, a rank 7 great demonic beast whose cultivation has fallen, and a little mouse. With this little strength, the Li family is facing a disaster. How useless. Chapter 685. The old man's tone was very arrogant, but there was also a trace of helplessness. He was the Li family's ancestor. Or rather, it was a part of the Li family's ancestors' will before he died. This will was also divided into several parts, and they were all given to the Li family's Unity of Heaven realm experts so that their lives would not be in danger. The most complete part was naturally on Li Jueqing's body. He would only appear when Li Jueqing was under the threat of death. Nine Leaf looked at the Li family's ancestors' will, and purple light flowed in his eyes. He licked his lips slightly and said, "It's what a great tonic." The Li family's ancestor frowned. In an instant the wind and clouds changed and a dark cloud appeared, just like his current mood. Leng Shiqi, who was hiding in the dark, was secretly shocked. The Li family's ancestor was clearly only left with a strand of will, but his emotions could still affect the weather. Hua Luiyue also appeared at this time. He was wearing the Nether Blood Robe assassin's robe. Without a word he extended 2 fingers. A bright red, demonic petal floated out from between his fingers. The petal floated down. It looked very slow, but in the blink of an eye, it was as if it had crossed space and landed on the Li family's ancestor's head. The Li family's ancestor's eyes narrowed, and a hint of seriousness appeared. "You have already reached the point of condensing the spiritual power of heaven and earth. It seems that you are not far from that step. Unfortunately, you are still a little lacking." Cloud flipping. The Li family's ancestor's body shone with spiritual energy. Several giant palms gathered in all directions, and the spiritual power of heaven and earth surged like a black hole. In the 8 giant palms, there seemed to be a faint magical power that was enough to make heaven and earth lose color. That was the origin energy of heaven and earth. Only Tianyuan realm experts could control the origin energy of heaven and earth. Under the giant palms, the fragile petal did not dissipate immediately. Instead, it passed through 5 giant palms in succession before gradually fading away. Hua Luiyue said lightly, "You are very strong, but you are only a strand of will. Little did you know that your nemesis is here." Hearing this, the Li family's ancestor sneered. Just as he was about to speak, the giant scorpion shadow opened its mouth and spat out a large ball of green demonic power. The Li family's ancestor's expression suddenly changed. That wave of demonic energy actually contained a power that made his heart palpitate. As soon as the green demonic energy appeared, the Li family ancestor's shadow began to tremble slightly. The edges of his body already showed signs of collapsing. Why is that? The Li family patriarch's eyes widened as he stared at Nine Leaf. Suddenly, he seemed to remember something and said in horror, "You're the soul-leaving scorpion. Now that you know, it is too late." Nine Leaf smiled enchantingly. The green light expanded and turned into 2 tentacles that wrapped around the Li family elder's shadow. Immediately after, wisps of soul energy visible to the naked eye were extracted from the Li family patriarch's body by Nine Leaf. The Li family patriarch's figure immediately shrank. He was horrified, but he couldn't give up just like that. He formed a strange seal and immediately transformed into a ferocious demonic creature. Demonic chi surged and even the ground shook. And a portion of Nine Leaves' demonic power was forced back. The Li clan ancestor finally saw a glimmer of hope. "If you were still at the 7th step, then I really wouldn't have any chance at all. However, you're only at the 6th step now, so you can't do anything to me." Demonic transformation. But at this moment, dots of starlight suddenly appeared. In the blink of an eye, the starlight flowed and a complicated star chart shone in the night sky. In the blink of an eye, this space turned into a starry universe. The Li family patriarch's demonic body suddenly shrank by more than half. He couldn't help but be shocked. Because he could no longer sense and mobilize the spiritual power of heaven and earth? Or it could be said that this space had been completely isolated. Leng Shiqi walked out. He was bathed in the bright starlight. This was the heavenly cycle star god shield that he used. And Nine Leaves' demonic power wasn't affected much because what Nine Leaf used could be considered the innate ability of the soul-leaving scorpion, not borrowing the spiritual power of heaven and earth. Under this situation, the Li family patriarch's soul energy was constantly being extracted, and his demonic body was about to collapse. At this moment, Leng Shiqi formed a Buddhist seal and a Vairocana Dharma idol bloomed behind him. The solemn Buddhist light illuminated the ages. Leng Shiqi clenched his fists and black and white light intertwined. The power of yin and yang surged and condensed into a yin-yang dragon that coiled on the shoulder of the Buddha statue. Then he tapped his dantian with one finger. With a whoosh, a faint layer of golden red dragon flames burned. Dragon flames burning the world, Buddhist light everywhere. Leng Shiqi didn't move. Just this power caused the Li family patriarch's demonic body to completely collapse. Nine Leaf was delighted and worked even harder to absorb the Li family patriarch's soul energy. Now the Li family patriarch's phantom had dimmed a lot. He turned his head in shock. This is the golden red dragon flames? No, and that divine power, what is it? Why have I never seen it before? You talk too much. The Li family seems to have inherited this trait of yours. Leng Shiqi was expressionless. He stretched out a palm and the Vairocana Dharma idol also slapped out a palm. In an instant endless Buddhist light gathered and condensed into a golden Buddha palm that covered the sky. Vairocana, Vajra annihilation, Buddha's divine palm. At the same time, Buddhist lotuses appeared in the air and blocked all escape routes. The Li family patriarch's eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. At first, he thought that this person was just a little mouse, but he actually had such strength. In his opinion, Leng Shiqi's Buddha's divine palm was close to the middle and late stages of oneness of heaven and man. Especially when the spiritual power of heaven and earth was isolated, anyone below the middle stage of oneness of heaven and man would be vulnerable. The Li family patriarch began to struggle wildly. However, he was just a thought. He could still mobilize the spiritual power of heaven and earth and even a trace of elemental energy of heaven and earth. But now there was a tiger in front and a wolf behind. He was really in a desperate situation. The Buddha's divine palm fell and the Li family patriarch's phantom was swallowed by the Buddhist light and completely disappeared from the world. Even Li Jueqing, who was still hiding in the blood cocoon, died without a complete corpse. Jiuli also quickly withdrew her demonic power and retreated far away. The Buddhist light was also very effective against demonic beasts like her. Fortunately, Leng Shiqi did not target her, so she could control the Li family patriarch and continue to weaken his strength. When all the Buddhist light dissipated, a huge palm print with a radius of 20 to 30 miles appeared on the ground. Looking carefully, it was hundreds of feet deep. There was also a terrifying power in it that made people afraid to approach. Jiu Li and Hua Luiwei were also a little dazed when they saw this scene. Was this really the destructive power of someone in the middle stage of Gang spirit realm? In fact, this was achieved by Leng Shiqi using the Heavenly Star Gang, Vajra Unbreakable Divine Art, Floating Dragon Taishu, Red Gold Earth Dragon Flame and Buddha's Divine Palm at the same time. At this moment, Leng Shiqi's face was incomparably pale. His various powers had been greatly exhausted, especially the Crimson Gold Earth Dragon Flame, which was already in a weakened state. Now that he had forcefully used it, it was likely that he wouldn't be able to use it for a period of time. He quickly retracted the Heavenly Cycle Star God Gang. Looking at the huge palm print, he frowned. Then, in order to make it easier for him to go back without being noticed, Nine Leaves' soul entered the Leng Shiqi's galaxy space as usual, while his physical body was placed in the system space. Leng Shiqi immediately activated Fate and teleported back to Xingji Pavilion's secret cultivation room. As soon as he returned, he prepared to meditate to recover his strength. However, Nine Leaf could not help but ask curiously, "Leng Shiqi, what have you been through these days? Why did your strength increase so quickly? Just now, when you killed that mysterious shadow, even I had to retreat. How many secrets do you have that I don't know?" Leng Shiqi certainly could not answer this question truthfully. However, just as he opened his mouth, he was interrupted by Nine Leaf. "All right, you don't have to explain. Anyway, there is no truth in your words." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi was relieved because he really did not have a good reason or excuse. At the same time, he said a little resentfully, "Thank you for your understanding, Senior Nine Leaf. Since you are so capable that you can even kill Li Jueqing, then the position of the 4 great managers is probably not far from yours. Nine Leaves' voice was a little teasing. And this sentence happened to speak to Leng Shiqi's heart. The reason why he went through so much trouble to kill Li Jueqing, other than for revenge, was also for the position of the 4 great managers. If he had to wait for one of the 4 great managers to abdicate or die in an accident before he had a chance, how long would he have to wait? Even the oldest manager Hai was said to have just started to deteriorate. As long as he controlled himself and did not take action, it would not be a problem for him to live for another 20 or 30 years. It had only been a few years since Leng Shiqi left Blood Mist Island. He did not have the patience to wait for another 20 or 30 years. Previously, he had strived hard to obtain the position of deputy manager in order to have the qualifications to compete for the position of 4 great managers. Only the 36 deputy managers had this qualification. The others could not even think about it. And among these 36 people, a portion of the competitors could be eliminated first. Now that Li Jueqing was dead, the Li family still had Li Jianghu and Li family's 4th uncle, 2 Oneness of Heaven realm experts. There were also several deputy managers under them. It seemed that their power was still quite strong. However, without the deterrence of the position of 4 great managers, how many people would be willing to continue to be loyal to the Li family? Moreover, one should not forget that the Li family had offended many people. Now that Li Jueqing was dead, the first to make trouble would probably be Eunuch Gao. As for the others, most of them would hit them when they were down. In particular, the great commander, Heavenly Venerable Black Flame, had long disliked the Li family. As long as he acquiesced, the Li family would not survive for long. At that time, everyone in the Li family would naturally lose the qualifications to compete for the position of 4 great managers. In total, Leng Shiqi's competitors were only about 20 people. Of course, none of those 20 people were simple people. They had been deputy managers for many years. Whether it was strength, experience, ability, influence, or all kinds of connections, they were all very strong. It was impossible for Leng Shiqi to compete with them directly. Could be said that he was beaten in all aspects. Leng Shiqi intended to find another way. The only thing he lacked was an opportunity. Now that Li Jueqing was dead, the opportunity had come. His eyes moved and he said to Nine Leaf, "Senior, if I become one of the 4 great managers of the Dark Thunder Guards, I don't dare to say anything else, but I can definitely help you recover your cultivation in the shortest time possible." "Oh, you're already painting a big picture for me?" Nine Leaf said. Leng Shiqi knew that Nine Leaf would not agree to help him if he did not take out some practical benefits. He directly took out a mustard seed bag and said, "Senior, these are the treasures I obtained in Void Scar Sky 2 days ago. I'll give them all to you as a token of my sincerity." Nine Leaves' spiritual power swept across the mustard seed bag, and he immediately laughed. "You're really rich now. Don't worry, as long as the resources are in place, just call me when it's time to help." Immediately Leng Shiqi felt relieved. With Nine Leaf around, it could be considered a form of protection for him. Then he began to meditate and recuperate. When dawn broke the next day, he could hear the noise outside even from the secret room. Feichin anxiously shouted outside, "Master, something big has happened. Manager Li is dead." Although Leng Shiqi had deliberately erased the traces of the battle, the Dark Thunder Guards here were all experts in investigation. He was really afraid of being found out. Everyone looked around and their expressions turned ugly. The aged general manager Hai said strangely, strange, from the remnant aura, there was clearly a battle between Unity of Heaven and Man Realm here not long ago, but why are there no signs of battle left behind? Even if the culprit deliberately erased it, it's impossible to erase it so cleanly. Shintazhen grabbed a handful of soil from the ground and said, "This soil is very strange. There's an indescribable aura in it. The culprit might be an expert who cultivates an earth attribute cultivation technique." Eunuch Gao shook his head slightly. "I think there's definitely more than one culprit. Almost no one in Unity of Heaven and Man Realm can kill Li Jueqing alone. Also, I think I caught a very weak demonic aura." "I felt it too." General Manager Hai continued, "Could it be someone from the Imperial Beast Abode or the Blood Beast sect?" Eunuch Gao refuted, "It shouldn't be. These 2 sects are in the Northern Wei Empire. It's impossible for them to come all the way here to kill General Manager Li. Moreover, if a Unity of Heaven and Man Realm expert from the Northern Wei Empire came to the Thunderblaze Empire, the Dark Thunder Guards would have found out long ago. You don't need to investigate." At this time Empyrean Black Flame spoke. The three general managers immediately walked over respectfully. Since the general had spoken, he must have seen something. Empyrean Black Flame looked at the ground under his feet and said, "The culprit is a heavenly origin realm expert." What? Eunuch Gao and the other two were shocked. It wasn't impossible for the culprit to be a heavenly origin realm expert. What puzzled them was, why would a heavenly origin realm expert want to kill Li Jueqing? If one were to say who was Li Jueqing's sworn enemy, it would definitely be Eunuch Gao. However, he couldn't invite a heavenly origin realm expert to take action. Moreover, although they didn't find too many clues, they could determine that a fierce battle had occurred here. If a heavenly origin realm expert took action, he could kill Li Jueqing with a flip of his hand. Why would he go through so much trouble? Empyrean Black Flame explained, "The ground under our feet has been tampered with by someone. Contains a strange power of the earth. That is a power that surpasses the origin energy of heaven and earth. Even this Empyrean has only just touched this level. There are many kinds of auras left here. However, Li Jueqing has learned a lot in his life, so it's not strange. As for why Li Jueqing wasn't killed instantly, don't forget that Li Jueqing's ancestor is very strong." With these words, Eunuch Gao and the other two became even more restless. It seemed that the person who took action was a peak existence even in the heavenly origin realm. Moreover, they also felt that Empyrean Black Flame's words were reasonable. Back then, the Li family's ancestor was indeed an extremely talented person. Unfortunately, in order to seek a higher realm, he had tortured himself until he was crippled. In the end, he could only die depressed. Before the Li family's ancestor died, he must have left behind some life-saving trump cards for his descendants. "Grand Commander, what should we do next?" Manager Hai asked. Empyrean Black Flame muttered to himself, "I will personally report this matter to His Majesty. Quickly settle down the Li family and stabilize the Dark Thunder Guards." After all, the battle to wipe out so many sects requires the strength of the Dark Thunder Guards. We cannot be a burden to His Majesty. This subordinate obeys, Manager Hai and the other two said in unison. Immediately after, Empyrean Black Flame transformed into a stream of black fire and suddenly disappeared. Eunuch Gao, Manager Hai and Shintuzhen looked at each other, then smiled faintly. Actually, they knew better than anyone else that Li Jueqing's death was definitely not that simple. However, since the Grand Commander had already made a decision, they naturally did not want to investigate further. What they cared more about was that there were still enormous benefits waiting for them. That was to divide up the Li family's power and resources. With Li Jueqing's death, the Li family only had fourth uncle and Li Jianghu, two Unity of Heaven realm experts left. In the eyes of Eunuch Gao and the others, there was nothing to fear. Now, whoever acted faster would be able to divide up more benefits. As for how Li Jueqing died, it was not important to them. As for the Dark Thunder Guard's face? Could face be used as food? Everyone immediately returned home. As for Leng Shiqi, the stone in his heart finally fell to the ground. He could say with certainty that if the person who died last night was one of the other three managers, the matter would definitely not have ended so carelessly. Even Empyrean Black Flame would have investigated with all his might. Perhaps he could have found some clues. But who told Li Jueqing and the Li family to be so powerful? From Empyrean Black Flame and Eunuch Gao to the ordinary War Thunder Guards and Hidden Thunder Guards, they all disliked the Li family. Thus, Li Jueqing's death was something that everyone was happy to see. Since that was the case, why not go with the flow and use this opportunity to pull out the Li family? From then on, Empyrean Black Flame could completely control the entire Dark Thunder Guards. Eunuch Gao and the others could also divide up a huge amount of power and resources. This was a win-win situation, so why not? Chapter 688. Starting early in the morning, the Dark Thunder Guard carried out a great purge. Under Heavenly Venerable He Yan's tacit approval and the joint efforts of the three general managers, the entire Li family's forces were uprooted in a short day. The Li family's two Unity of Heaven realm experts, Li Jianghu and Li family's fourth uncle, had suffered from the backlash of the spiritual attachment technique. Their old injuries had yet to heal, and after learning that Li Jueqing had died, they were even more anxious. They could not personally go to the scene and could only wait for the result at home. However, the result they waited for was a disaster. Eunuch Gao, General Manager Hai, and Shintuzhen personally took action and beheaded Li Jianghu and Li family's fourth uncle in a few moves. They did not even have time to say that Li Jueqing had gone to hunt down Leng Shiqi before they died with hatred. They also framed Li Jueqing and the Li family with one heinous crime after another, declaring that Li Juqing reaped what he sowed and that they were cleaning up the family. In this way the Dark Thunder Guard's face was saved, and they also gained the reputation of being righteous and upright. That day the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters was filled with the smell of blood. Corpses were carried out one after another, piling up into a mountain of corpses. It was not until evening that Heavenly Venerable He Yen summoned all the people above the inspector rank to gather in the conference hall. Leng Shiqi was naturally present. After taking his seat, he found that there were only about 3/4 of the people left, and there were only about 20 deputy general managers. Even if some people were out on missions, it was impossible for there to be only so few people. It seemed that within this day many of the Dark Thunder Guard's upper echelons had died. Of course, in the near future this place would be full of people again. However, at that time, the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters forces would have been reshuffled. Everyone present sat upright and still, not daring to neglect in the slightest, and not daring to make the slightest sound. This time, not only did the general come to the conference, but everyone also personally experienced today's purge. They were all extremely shocked. The Li family, which had been rooted in the Dark Thunder Guards for so long, was destroyed so easily. The Dark Thunder Guards changed so quickly, which made it difficult for most people to adapt in a short time. After everyone arrived, Emperor Black Flame finally appeared. He said, "This Emperor has already reported Li Jueqing's death to His Majesty. Li Jueqing deserved his punishment, but we cannot allow the murderer to go unpunished. We must continue to investigate." His Majesty meant that in order not to delay the plan to annihilate many powerful sects, the Dark Thunder Guards could not be lost. Therefore we will elect a successor to the position of the 4th Grand Chief within 2 days. As soon as he said that, a commotion broke out in the meeting hall. The eyes of the deputy general managers lit up. According to the rules of the Dark Thunder Guards, every deputy general manager had the qualifications to become one of the 4 general managers. Perhaps one of them could become the 4th general manager. That would truly be standing at the peak of the mountain of authority. With just this identity, one could do whatever they wanted in the Thunderflame dynasty. Emperor Black Flame raised his hand, and the crowd immediately quieted down. In the past, strength, ability, and meritorious service were indispensable in the selection of the 4 general managers. But this time it's urgent, and I don't want another Li Jueqing to appear in the Dark Thunder Guards. Therefore, the selection of the 4 general managers should be based on loyalty and ability. The deputy general managers present all frowned secretly. Most of these deputy general managers were experienced and had high strength and meritorious service. But Emperor Black Flame's words made them lose their biggest advantage, which was more advantageous to the new deputy general manager. At this time, several people looked at Leng Shiqi sitting on the side. Among all the deputy general managers, the one who was least likely to be one of the 4 general managers was definitely Leng Shiqi. His cultivation was only at the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm. Of course, at his age, the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm was already very outstanding. Moreover, his cultivation speed was also very fast. It could be said that his potential was infinite. Unfortunately, his time in the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards was very short, and his meritorious service was far less than that of others. If he had a few more years, he might have become a strong competitor. But the rules of the selection of the 4 general managers were different from those of the past. Even Leng Shiqi seemed to have a chance. Eunuch Gao and the other 2 also showed a thoughtful look. Now the deputy general managers who could still sit here were the 3 general managers' subordinates. If anyone could elect a general manager, it was equivalent to having the power of 2 general managers. None of them would let go of such an opportunity. So now the most important thing was, what was the process and test of the 4 general managers? Everyone's eyes were focused on Emperor Black Flame. He continued, according to the previous rules, all the deputy general managers are qualified to compete. There are 3 steps in the process. First, the meritorious service is verified. Second, the supervisor, and the 3 general managers are elected. Finally, the most important step is to be decided by His Majesty. When he said this, everyone's heart was a little turbulent again. In the past, the process of selecting the 4 general managers was similar, but there was no competition. The biggest difference was that His Majesty was directly involved in this matter. In fact, in the past, the appointment of the 4 general managers was also decided by His Majesty. Most of the time, it was the same person who was elected by everyone. But according to Emperor Black Flame's words, the appointment this time seemed to be decided by His Majesty. All right, His Majesty has decreed that the new general manager must be elected by tomorrow night. Prepare tonight, and the election will begin tomorrow morning. After saying this, Empyrean Black Flame waved everyone away. A moment later, Leng Shiqi followed Eunuch Gao to the cold nether pavilion. There were 7 deputy general managers who came with him. They were all Eunuch Gao's subordinates who wanted to run for the position of the 4 general managers. Only one of them was not in the imperial capital. He was afraid that he would miss this opportunity. Eunuch Gao said solemnly, "Who among you wants to be the new general manager? Step forward." As soon as he finished speaking, 6 people stepped forward. As for the remaining 2 people, 2 of them were old men with white beards. They knew that they were too old and did not have the energy, so they gave up. Leng Shiqi was one of the 6 people who stepped forward. His actions were naturally seen by others. The other 5 people were more or less disdainful. In terms of potential and Eunuch Gao's favor, they admitted that they were not as good as Leng Shiqi. But in terms of other things, he was not good enough. Leng Shiqi stepping forward was completely within Eunuch Gao's expectations. After all, everyone knew about Leng Shiqi's ambition. Eunuch Gao said, "There are 6 of you now. Instead of electing all 6 of you at the same time, it's better to choose the most likely candidate. I will fully support him and there will be more hope." The 6 people looked at each other. They all knew what Eunuch Gao meant. He wanted them to go through an internal selection first. Chapter 689. Eunuch Gao looked at Leng Shiqi and the others and said, "Time is of the essence. You only have one chance to persuade me." The first to speak was the middle-aged man standing in the middle. Although Leng Shiqi wasn't familiar with this person, he still knew him. This person's name was Ning Xinghua. He had a powerful cultivation base at the late stage of unity of heaven and man. He could be considered Eunuch Gao's true right-hand man. Ning Xinghua had been following Eunuch Gao for more than 10 years and had made countless contributions to the empire. Among the 6 of them, Ning Xinghua was the most qualified to compete for the position of one of the 4 chiefs. He cupped his fists and said, "My lord, I will fight for you in the Dark Thunder Guard." Ning Xinghua didn't say much. He didn't need to say much. Just one sentence was enough. This was his confidence. However, the others couldn't give up just like that. Immediately, the next person took over. Originally, Leng Shiqi was also thinking about how to persuade Eunuch Gao. However, a thick drop of ink suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. Immediately, the ink drop seemed to drip into the water and rippled. The scene around him instantly turned into a sea of black fire. Heavenly Sage He Yen turned into a flame god and stared at Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi didn't panic at all. He immediately saluted and said, "Greetings, Commander. I'm here for your reward." Heavenly Sage He Yen directly stated his purpose. In fact, Leng Shiqi had guessed the moment Heavenly Sage He Yen appeared. He raised his head and asked, "Commander, I wonder if I can change my reward?" Heavenly Sage He Yen was a little surprised. "You don't even want a heaven and earth variant? You should know better than anyone the power of a heaven and earth variant." Leng Shiqi nodded and said, "Yes, a heaven and earth variant is indeed powerful. However, I want something else. I only need a word from you." Hearing this, Heavenly Sage He Yen seemed to have guessed Leng Shiqi's plan. He chuckled and said, "Lu Xingji, even if you have made great contributions, I can't support you in competing for the position of one of the 4 chiefs. Moreover, in this noble one's opinion, your chances are indeed very slim. I'm afraid that it would be very difficult for you to even get past Manager Gao. That's why I want a chance." Empyrean Black Flame stared at Leng Shiqi a few more times. "Your ambition is not small. Fine, this Empyrean wants to see what other tricks you are hiding." After saying this, Empyrean Black Flame snapped his fingers and Leng Shiqi's consciousness instantly returned. He turned his head and saw that the second person had just finished speaking. When the third person was about to speak, Eunuch Gao's expression suddenly changed. He reached out and interrupted the person, then suddenly looked at Leng Shiqi. Eunuch Gao's series of reactions aroused everyone's suspicion. They subconsciously looked at Leng Shiqi. Eunuch Gao said in a hoarse voice, "You don't have to say any more. I already know what to do." The others were all taken aback, especially the third person. He had lost his chance before he could even speak, so he felt extremely stifled in his heart. Ning Xinghua secretly smiled, feeling that he was in the bag. He did not expect Eunuch Gao to say, "I will do my best to recommend Lu Xingji." What? The others in the room suddenly stared at each other. Ning Xinghua could not help but exclaim, Even the two old men who had already given up stood up in surprise. At this time, everyone stared at Leng Shiqi. They did not understand. Eunuch Gao had just asked them to persuade him, but in the blink of an eye, he changed his mind and directly appointed Leng Shiqi. Why was this? This Lu Xingji had no qualifications, no cultivation, and no meritorious service. What qualifications did he have? Ning Xinghua did not care about anything else. He directly asked, "My lord, it's not that I doubt you, but you should at least give us an explanation. Why is this so?" Eunuch Gao stood up and said as he walked out, "This is the Grand Commander's intention." After saying this, Eunuch Gao left the place. It seemed that he was trying to build a relationship with Leng Shiqi, but the rest of the people were a bit frozen. Ning Xinghua clenched his fists tightly and then loosened them. This was the closest he had ever been to being one of the four chiefs. If he missed this opportunity, he was afraid that he would never have another chance. He looked fiercely at Leng Shiqi and said, "I really admire Lord Lu's ability to flatter others. Not only did you manage to get close to Eunuch Gao, you even got close to the Grand Commander. But do you think you can become one of the four chiefs like this? You're too naive." Although the others were not as explicit as Ning Xinghua, they did not give Leng Shiqi a good look. If he relied on his own ability to get to the top, then they would naturally be convinced. But Leng Shiqi could not compare to anyone else. How could they be convinced? As for Leng Shiqi, he did not care. He did not care about what Ning Xinghua and the others thought. He also did not care about what anyone thought. As long as he could sit in the position of one of the four chiefs, he would make everyone obediently shut their mouths. After that, he returned to Xingji Pavilion by himself. He Feichen had already received the news that Eunuch Gao was going to recommend him. With a face full of excitement, he said, "Congratulations, sir. You are now only one step away from becoming one of the four chief stewards." Leng Shiqi shook his head. "What's there to congratulate? 1 step away, 1,000 li away. The other two chiefs will definitely recommend someone much stronger than me." He Feichen's face also became serious. He quietly said, "My lord, this subordinate has already asked around about the other two people." "Is that so? Let's hear it." Leng Shiqi did not expect He Feichen to be so well informed. Chief Shin Tu recommended Quan Jingji. This person's cultivation is profound, and he is also rather extreme. He is upright and plain-spoken and abhors evil. Even if the Dark Thunder Guards did something wrong, he would not show any favoritism and severely punish them. Therefore he has offended many people. However, once someone is in danger, he will go save them even if it cost him his life. He does not care about his own life and interests. At the same time, he is also respected by many people. Therefore, anyone who supports him will definitely support him. His voice is very loud. When Leng Shiqi heard this, he was rather interested in this Quan Jingji. This person really lived up to his name. He Feichen continued, "As for the other person recommended by Chief Hai Su Weiran, he is even more impressive. This person competed with Chief Shin Tu for the position of one of the four chiefs more than 10 years ago. Unfortunately, he was one step behind. Later on, he joined Chief Hai's faction. This time he is preparing to make a comeback. His prestige is extremely high. He is also the person that everyone thinks is most likely to become one of the four chiefs." Leng Shiqi nodded. Since the news of the other two people had been obtained by He Feichen, then the news of Eunuch Gao recommending him would naturally be obtained by others. Right now, he could already imagine the doubts and ridicule of others. He was definitely the one with the least hope. Chapter 690. Just as Leng Shiqi had expected, when the people outside heard that Eunuch Gao had recommended Leng Shiqi, they all thought that Eunuch Gao had taken things too hard and given up. As Eunuch Gao had Ning Xinghua as his subordinate, many people felt that Leng Shiqi had given Eunuch Gao a lot of benefits. To the other two candidates, Quan Jingji and Su Weiran, this was great news. Originally there were 3 candidates, but now there were only 2 candidates. This meant that each of them had a 50% chance of becoming one of the 4 great generals. As for Leng Shiqi, they had already assumed that he did not exist. The next day, everyone gathered in the meeting hall again. When Leng Shiqi arrived, some people immediately pointed at him secretly. Leng Shiqi himself didn't think much of it, but his subordinates were filled with righteous indignation. Even Eunuch Gao was worried that Leng Shiqi's mental state would be affected, so he comforted him. Leng Shiqi sized up Quan Jingji and Su Weiran quietly after he sat down. Quan Jingji sat there with his back ramrod straight. He looked like he didn't want anyone to come near him. Regardless of whether they supported him or opposed him, he ignored them all. Su Weiran, on the other hand, was much more normal. He was the most respected person here, second only to the 4 great generals. As such, he began to get along well with everyone present, causing some of the neutral parties to lean towards him. As for Leng Shiqi's side, it was very quiet. Even though eunuch Gao spent an entire day running around for him, he did not manage to get many people to join him. Most of them were his subordinates. Eunuch Gao leaned back in his chair. He did not seem to be acting strangely, as if he had already given up on the election. Leng Shiqi did not feel any dissatisfaction from eunuch Gao either. After all, eunuch Gao was appointed by the heavenly venerable Black Flame. No one dared to question or disobey the orders of the Grand Commander. If eunuch Gao was dissatisfied with Leng Shiqi, that meant that he was dissatisfied with the Grand Commander's arrangements. He knew which was more important. Not long after, Empyrean Black Flame arrived. Everyone immediately quieted down. Heavenly Venerable He Yen went straight to the point and said, "Today we will elect the new 4 chief managers. The candidates are Quan Jingji, Su Weiran, and Lu Xingji. Since the main purpose of this election is to test your ability and loyalty, we will first check your achievements in the past year." When they heard this condition, Quan Jingji and Su Weiran's expressions froze. Especially Su Weiran, who was beaming just now, instantly turned pale. Faint sounds of discussion could be heard in the conference hall. In the past, there would also be a segment to check the merit points, but that was to check the merit points of the past 5 years. The main purpose of checking your merit points was to see if you had slacked off recently. This was to prevent some people from sitting on the merit book and taking advantage of their seniority. But then again, after they reached the position of Deputy General Manager, there were almost no tasks that required them to carry out personally. As the Deputy General Manager, his job was to make decisions and manage the intelligence of the provinces and counties. How could he run around by himself? Of course, there were some mission maniacs who would carry out missions personally, such as Quan Jingji. Hence, everyone could accept the 5 years limit. However, Heavenly Venerable He Yen said that he wanted to check the merit points accumulated in the past year. This was beyond everyone's expectations. Furthermore, everyone looked at Leng Shiqi silently. He had only entered the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards for slightly more than a year. Wasn't Heavenly Venerable He Yen siding with him by setting such a rule? Many people began to feel dissatisfied in their hearts. "Do you have any objections?" Heavenly Venerable He Yen looked at everyone and said calmly. The conference hall instantly became abnormally silent. Even the atmosphere seemed to have frozen. Everyone was shaking their heads frantically. The great commander sitting in front of them was not a kind person. Back then, after he took over the great commander of the Dark Thunder Guards from the Li family's elder, he carried out a huge purge. His hands were stained with the blood of countless Dark Thunder Guards. Coupled with the matter of eliminating the Li family 2 days ago, everyone respected and feared Heavenly Venerable He Yen. Heavenly Venerable He Yen continued, "The reason why I made such a request is not because I am biased towards anyone. I do not want my Deputy General Manager to spend his remaining years there. I do not want the new 4 general managers to be a hands-off shopkeeper." After these words were spoken, everyone felt that the Dark Thunder Guards were about to change again. After eliminating the Li family, Heavenly Venerable He Yen could be said to have complete control of the Dark Thunder Guards. The rules would probably have to be changed in the future. Everyone could not help but feel a little nervous. "These are the missions and merit points that I have completed in the past year. Please take a look, Great Commander." At this moment, someone took the initiative to step forward with his own token. He was Quan Jingji. Su Weiran's expression darkened again. Everyone knew that Quan Jingji could not stay idle. As long as there was a mission that required him to do, he would do it. As such, even though he was the Deputy General Manager, it was rare to see him in the Dark Thunder Guards headquarters. One could imagine how many merit points he had accumulated in a year. However, Su Weiran was completely different. In the past year, he had spent most of his time dealing with important matters and socializing. His merit points were few and far between. However, since the great commander had already spoken and Quan Jingji had already done so, what else could he do? Su Weiran also handed over his own token. He even took a look at Leng Shiqi. In his opinion, Leng Shiqi had only been in the Dark Thunder Guards headquarters for a year and had only been the Deputy General Manager for less than a month. Leng Shiqi's merit points were definitely not as high as his, so he felt slightly better. At the very least, he was not at the bottom. As long as he won the voting segment by a huge margin, he still had a high chance of winning. However, when Leng Shiqi handed over his token and the merit points of all 3 of them appeared, everyone could not help but gasp. They looked at Leng Shiqi in disbelief. As the junior with the least experience, Leng Shiqi had actually obtained more than 200,000 merit points in a short year. None of the envoy inspectors present would be able to accumulate so many merit points in their entire lives. In fact, Leng Shiqi had obtained these merit points from the missions in Shantai Prefecture, Ningyan Prefecture, and West Wilderness Prefecture. Especially the missions in Shantai Prefecture and Ningyan Prefecture, they were all huge contributions. That was why he had so many merit points. On the other hand, Quan Jingji had more than 190,000 merit points. Originally he should have been the most shocking, but compared to Leng Shiqi he was still slightly lacking. As for Su Weiran, he only had about 60,000 merit points. In fact, most of the deputy general managers had about the same amount of merit points in a year. However, to take it out in this situation was really embarrassing. In comparison, Su Weiran's face alternated between green and red. He wanted nothing more than to find a hole to hide in. He could even imagine that even if he became one of the 4 general managers in the future, he would become a laughingstock today. Chapter 691. Heavenly Venerable He Yen was slightly surprised by this result. In his opinion, Quan Jingji should have won this round. However, he was defeated by Leng Shiqi, who was a junior. He said, Lu Xingji won the merit competition. Next, it will be everyone's turn to vote. Manager Hai, you guys go first. There was no need to talk about who the 3 managers would vote for. The second round was for people above the rank of inspector to vote. These 3 managers' biggest role was to canvass for votes at the end. Manager Hai stood up and bowed slightly to Heavenly Venerable He Yen, then said, I vote for Deputy Manager Su Weiran. He has the highest seniority, and there is no need to doubt his ability. Not to mention that he was the patrol envoy for many years, ensuring the safety of one side. Later he entered the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards and made outstanding contributions. He was also cautious and conscientious when he became the deputy manager. He has never failed in any of the cases he handled. Furthermore, he also participated in the election of the 4 great managers last time. In the end, he was just a hair's breadth away. I only want to say 4 words, who else but him? Shen Tuzhen immediately said, I don't think so. I admit that Su Weiran was indeed admirable in the past. Back then I won against him because of luck. However, everyone could see that he only had a few tens of thousands of merit points in the past year. This was a little too unreasonable. However, Quan Jingji is different. Even though he doesn't have as many merit points as Lu Xingji, Quan Jingji's merit points are never less than 150,000. Even I can't guarantee that he can achieve this. Furthermore, what is the most important thing for a Dark Thunder Guard? That is to absolutely obey the rules of the Dark Thunder Guards, to obey the commander. Everyone here knows Quan Jingji's character very well. He has always been fair in handling matters. He has never cheated for personal gains. If such a person doesn't become one of the 4 great managers, who else is qualified? Finally, it was Eunuch Gao's turn. He was no longer half lying on the chair. Leng Shiqi had won the first round. Regardless of the final result, at least he had won back some face. This made Eunuch Gao very satisfied. He said leisurely, let's cut to the chase. Lu Xingji's merit points are enough to explain everything. Who among you can get more than 200,000 merit points in 1 year with the cultivation of Gang Spirit Realm? He looked around, but no one dared to meet his gaze. Eunuch Gao returned to his seat and didn't say another word. He did not say much, but the effect was very good. No one present could do what Leng Shiqi did. This showed the uniqueness and power of Leng Shiqi, as well as his terrifying potential. Steward Hai, Steward Shintu, and Eunuch Gao's words could be said to be more persuasive. Leng Shiqi and the other 2 indeed had their most praiseworthy sides. Now it was up to the others to choose. The only difference was that the others were elected anonymously, which meant that they would vote. Furthermore, the number of votes given to each position was also different. The inspector only had 1 vote, the eunuch had 2 votes, and the deputy general manager had 3 votes. Starting from the deputy general manager, everyone stepped forward one after another to vote. Although the process was hidden, everyone knew who had roped them in. As such, the corners of Su Weiran's mouth began to curl up. Compared to Quan Jingji and Leng Shiqi, he had a huge advantage in this aspect. The voting process was very fast. It was over in about 15 minutes. Heavenly Venerable He Yen stood up and said, the results are here. However, this is only the result of the first 2 rounds. It is only for reference. As for who will be the 4th Grand Manager, it is still up to His Majesty to decide. Then, Heavenly Venerable He Yen entered the palace to meet His Majesty. However, no one left. They were all here to witness the birth of the new Grand Manager. Leng Shiqi won the first round of the merit points competition. If there were no surprises in the second round, Su Weiran would win. This made it seem like Quan Jingji had the least hope. Shen Tuzhen's expression did not look too good. He also felt a little aggrieved for Quan Jingji. Quan Jingji had never been greedy for riches and pleasure. He had always been on the front lines of danger. If he lost to Su Weiran, then so be it. However, if he lost to Leng Shiqi, then it would be too much of a loss. Everyone else was also discussing. As the subject of discussion, Leng Shiqi was very calm. He even closed his eyes to rest. Eunuch Gao glanced at him and closed his eyes as well. The two of them did not seem to fit in at all. On the other side, Heavenly Venerable He Yen reported the results to Lei Qingjun. Then he retreated outside the palace to await his orders. As the commander of the Dark Lightning Guards, he could not interfere too much with the appointment of the 4 Grand Managers. Otherwise, Heavenly Venerable He Yen would not have allowed Li Jueqing to become one of the 4 Grand Managers. This was a method used by the royal family to prevent the Dark Lightning Guards from becoming a one-man show. The previous 4 Grand Managers included Eunuch Gao from the palace and Shen Tuzhen, who had a military background. In the palace, Lei Qingjun looked at Heavenly Venerable He Yan's report. When he saw Su Weiran and Quan Jingji's information, he was very casual. However, when he read Leng Shiqi's report, he read it very carefully. Then he passed the report to Eunuch Du, who was waiting beside him. "Little Du, who do you think is more suitable for the 4 Grand Managers?" Eunuch Du smiled flatteringly and said carefully, "I do not dare to say anything. I just feel that Su Weiran and Quan Jingji are more suitable." "Why?" Eunuch Du chose his words carefully. After all, Lu Xingji's experience is still shallow, and his cultivation base is still insufficient. Moreover, when he snatched the heavenly thunderfire bead in Void Scar Sky, it shows that he is bold and reckless and somewhat young and frivolous. However, the second son is indeed a promising talent. If he is polished for a few more years, he may have the qualifications. "Arrogant," Lei Qingjun said in a voice that only he could hear. Then he personally wrote an imperial edict and said, "Go directly to the Dark Lightning Guards and announce the edict." Eunuch Du was stunned when he saw the name on the imperial edict. He raised his head in surprise and met Lei Qingjun's sharp gaze. He immediately knelt down and said, "I will go now." Outside, Heavenly Venerable He Yen saw Eunuch Du walk out. Just as he was about to ask, Eunuch Du gestured for him to keep quiet and rushed to the headquarters of the Dark Lightning Guards at the fastest speed. At this moment, the meeting hall was quite lively. When Heavenly Venerable He Yen and Eunuch Du arrived, everyone hurriedly went up to greet them. They knew that the result was out. Eunuch Du took out the imperial edict and shouted with a sharp voice, "By the will of the heavens, the Emperor decrees, the Deputy Grand Manager of the Dark Lightning Guards, the Great Supervisor of the Western Wilderness Province, Lu Xingji, is appointed as the new Grand Manager of the Dark Lightning Guards." End of the edict. After he finished reading the imperial edict, the entire meeting hall instantly fell into a dead silence. Everyone had an expression of disbelief. Chapter 692. No one had expected that His Majesty would appoint Lu Xingji, who was in Gang Spirit Realm, had the least experience in Foundation, and had the least supporters as the new 4 general managers. At this moment, most people even wondered whether His Majesty had made a mistake because of his old age. Of course, no one dared to say it out loud. Since the imperial edict had been issued, it was a foregone conclusion that no one could change. They had to admit that Leng Shiqi would become the new 4 great governors. Eunuch Du smiled and said, "Lord Lu, come and receive the edict." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Leng Shiqi received the imperial edict respectfully. At this moment he had made the right bet. Leng Shiqi had been gambling since Lei Qingjun deliberately released the news of the Crown Prince in Hengtian. He was betting that Lei Qingjun would do something big before he died, so he snatched the heavenly thunderfire bead in Hengtian. It turned out that he had guessed correctly. He gave the heavenly thunderfire bead to Lei Qingjun first and acted a little arrogantly in front of the princes and masters. This was to show Lei Qingjun that he was young. Being young meant that he had endless potential. It also meant that he could continue to be loyal to the Thunderfire dynasty for many years and help Lei Qingjun to support the next emperor. Leng Shiqi was telling Lei Qingjun that he could protect the future of the Thunderfire dynasty. No matter who ascended the throne in the future, the high-level forces of the Thunderfire dynasty would do their best to replace him. On one hand, it was to prevent the nobles from having too many soldiers. On the other hand, it was to select younger talents for the new emperor, who had his own foundation. The appearance of Leng Shiqi made Lei Qingjun see the future. Therefore, he made an exception and gave him the position of 4 great governors. After receiving the imperial edict, Leng Shiqi's heart was truly relieved. After all, before this, everything was just his guess. However, no one could guarantee that Lei Qingjun would really think so. Until now, he was completely relieved. "Thank you for your trouble, Eunuch Du. Why don't you stay for a banquet before you leave?" Leng Shiqi asked politely. Now that he had become one of the 4 chiefs, he would definitely hold a big banquet. Eunuch Du smiled and said, "His Majesty is still waiting for me to return and report. I appreciate Lord Lu's kindness, but there will be plenty of opportunities in the future. I'll see Eunuch Du off." No, Lord Lu is one of the 4 great chiefs. I'm sure you have a lot of things to deal with. I'll take my leave first." After Eunuch Du left, Heavenly Sovereign He Yen ordered a banquet to be arranged to celebrate Leng Shiqi. However, people like Su Weiran and Quan Jingji would definitely not participate. In fact, there were some people who wanted to refuse, but after thinking about it, they remembered that Leng Shiqi was one of the 4 chiefs appointed by His Majesty. If he deliberately caused trouble for them in the future, it would be really troublesome. As such, they chose to stay. At the banquet, all of the Dark Thunder Guards had complicated expressions. After all, Leng Shiqi had only been in the Dark Thunder Guards headquarters for a short period of time. It had only been slightly more than a year since he had been promoted from the envoy inspector to the deputy chief to the 4 great chiefs. This could be said to be completely unprecedented. In just a year, it was already very fast to be promoted from the envoy inspector to the 4 great chiefs. For example, Wu Diao, who was sitting not far away from Leng Shiqi, had arrived at the Dark Thunder Guards headquarters at the same time. Wu Diao, as the winner of the elite society and the personal disciple of Chief Steward Shintu, was also very outstanding. However, he only had the opportunity to be promoted to the position of internal supervisor a few days ago after eliminating the Li family. On the other hand, Leng Shiqi had become one of the 4 great chiefs. At this moment, Wu Diao shook his head and drank his wine. As he drank, he muttered to himself, "Comparisons are odious." Chief Shintu and Chief Hai were also unhappy. Leng Shiqi was considered a junior among juniors to them, but now he was on equal footing with them. However, on the surface they were still full of smiles. They were all saying that Leng Shiqi was young and promising, and had a bright future. As for Eunuch Gao, he didn't hide his joy for a long time. Although he didn't expect Leng Shiqi to become one of the 4 great chiefs, Eunuch Gao thought deeper. What was the purpose of His Majesty personally appointing Leng Shiqi? Moreover, Leng Shiqi was Eunuch Gao's disciple. Now that the master and disciple were both the 4 great chiefs, it was reasonable to say that Lei Qingjun wouldn't make such an arrangement. The only possibility was that His Majesty really valued Leng Shiqi. What really made Eunuch Gao happy was that he could finally sit firmly in his position as the 4 great chiefs. The reason why he had spent so much effort to cultivate his own faction was to protect himself during the change of power, and at the same time to retain the greatest power. Now that Leng Shiqi was one of the 4 great chiefs, he had a lot of power in the Dark Thunder Guards. With him and his disciple working together, even if they didn't have as deep a foundation as the Li family, they could at least keep their position as the 4 great chiefs. Eunuch Gao could also foresee that after the new emperor ascended the throne, he would no longer be able to keep his position in the palace. Of course, he didn't want to stay in the palace and wait for the new emperor. It was better this way. After the banquet, Leng Shiqi and Eunuch Gao returned to the cold nether pavilion. Eunuch Gao praised, "So you were already paving the way for yourself before you entered Void Scar. I have to say your vision is very far-sighted." "Master, you flatter me. I was just lucky," Leng Shiqi said humbly. "You are now one of the 4 great chiefs. You can sit on equal footing with me. There is no need to be so polite." "I don't dare." Leng Shiqi immediately shook his head and said, "As the saying goes, a teacher for a day is a teacher for life. I will never forget your care and support for me." Hearing this, even though Eunuch Gao knew that Leng Shiqi didn't really mean it, he still felt a little comforted in his heart. He was right about him. Well, we don't need to be so polite. Next, I want to talk about some important things. Speaking of this, his expression became solemn. First of all, although you are one of the 4 great chiefs, you have taken over Li Jueqing's position. However, most of the 9 eastern counties under Li Jueqing's supervision have been divided between me and Supervisor Hai. Therefore you don't have much power now. You have to be prepared. Leng Shiqi chuckled and said, Master, don't worry. I have some self-awareness. Not to mention other things, my cultivation in the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm is not enough to deter people. If I force myself to have too much power, it will only bring trouble to myself. Eunuch Gao was very satisfied with Leng Shiqi's attitude. After all, he had also robbed Leng Shiqi of a lot of power. Now you can only supervise 3 counties, but your influence is not small. There are more than a dozen masters in the oneness of heaven and men realm under you. You don't have to worry about whether they will obey you or not. I will help you with this. In addition, tomorrow you will set off to Pinghui County to participate in the extermination of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. Today is different from the past. This is your first task as one of the 4 great chiefs. There must be no mistakes. Now that Pinghui County has been robbed by Supervisor Hai, this is a good opportunity for you to regain Pinghui County. You have to seize it well. In order to make you more confident, this time you can bring 2 more masters in the oneness of heaven and men realm to help you. There is no time to lose. I will take you to your post now. With me around, no one will dare to mess around. Many thanks, Master. After that, Leng Shiqi went through all the necessary procedures and finally obtained the identity token of the 4 great chiefs. He put on the special black and red official uniform of the 4 great chiefs. It was imprinted with thunder and fire patterns. This uniform itself was a level 6 spirit tool. After he put it on, he looked even more heroic. In the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guard, the place that was originally occupied by the Li family was now owned by Leng Shiqi. He directly moved the name of Xingji Pavilion over. At the same time, the envoy inspectors and eunuch envoys who had been following him all this time also followed. They could be considered his most original team. After being busy for almost an entire day, the new Xingji Pavilion was completed in the evening. There were dozens of people standing in 3 rows in the conference hall. These people were his 3 deputy general managers, 14 internal supervisor envoys, and 70 to 80 envoy inspectors. This force was enough to destroy any first-rate sect, and it could be easily done. Leng Shiqi walked into the hall and sat on the throne in the middle. Everyone simultaneously knelt down and shouted, "Greetings, Chief Supervisor Liu." Chapter 693. Looking at the masters kneeling in front of him, it was impossible for Leng Shiqi to be calm. But he didn't become arrogant and tried to control his emotions. Please get up. We are all on the same side. You don't have to be so polite in the future. An old man standing at the front cupped his hands and said, "This humble one is Ren Yi. We congratulate Chief Steward Liu on his appointment. We finally have a pillar of support." 2 days ago, the headquarters of Dark Thunder Guards purged the forces of the Li family. Including Li Zhuge and the 4th uncle of the Li family, a total of 6 deputy directors and more than 20 eunuchs were killed. The people who could still stand here were somewhat special. They were either people who had been hidden away by Li Zhucheng, or some old guys who didn't have many days left, or people who had just entered the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards and hadn't completely submitted to Li Zhucheng. For example, the 3 deputy directors in front of Leng Shiqi were all gray-haired old men. Their qi and blood began to decline, and their combat effectiveness was getting worse and worse. There were also several old men among the 14 eunuchs. Basically, these people could only deal with things. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but feel a little headache. It seemed that he didn't have many real top fighting forces in his hands. In addition to these old men, there were only 8 masters in the realm of oneness of heaven and men. Because 2 of the eunuchs were in the realm of Gang Spirit, who had just entered the headquarters of Dark Thunder Guards and had good potential. Most of the 8 masters in the realm of oneness of heaven and men were in the early stage of oneness of heaven and men, and only 2 of them were in the middle stage. In fact, this kind of strength was very strong in any place in the world. But compared with the other 3 directors, it was too weak. The strength in one's hands determined the right to speak in Dark Thunder Guards. At present, Leng Shiqi was only a little stronger than the deputy directors, but he was still too weak in front of Eunuch Gao and others. Therefore, Leng Shiqi had 2 priorities. One was to accumulate great merits and cultivate a team as soon as possible, and completely gain a foothold in Dark Thunder Guards. The other was to improve his cultivation and strength. Only when he became stronger could he be truly powerful. Leng Shiqi said to Ren Yi and the others, "I will be setting off for Pinghui County tomorrow. I will need 2 Oneness of Heaven realm experts to accompany me. I wonder who is willing to go." At that moment, other than the few old men who had lost their vigor, the other 8 Unity of Heaven Realm cultivators all stood out. Your humble servant is willing to go. They all knew that the Eastern Suppression Thunderflame Army and the Imperial Family's Hall of Worship were the main forces in the destruction of the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect. The Dark Lightning Guards were, at most, responsible for providing intelligence and sealing off information. It could be said that they were there to gain merits and experience. Of course, anyone would want to go there. Lung Shiqi had expected this. He said, I don't know much about you, but time is tight. How about this, the 2 with the highest cultivation will follow me. Subordinate Yan Ming accept the order. Subordinate Deng Xinlei accepts the order. The 2 of them were overjoyed and immediately bowed to receive their orders. As for the others, they couldn't say anything. Cultivation was their biggest advantage, and they couldn't blame others for their cultivation being inferior to theirs. On the surface, Yan Ming didn't look old and was quite handsome. However, he had a full beard, which made him look somewhat melancholic. As for Deng Xinlei, he looked like a carefree person. Lung Shiqi turned his head and ordered, during this period of time when I'm not at the headquarters, Deputy Chief Ren Yi will be in charge of managing everything in the Xingji Pavilion. Rest assured, my lord. Your humble servant will definitely manage the Xingji Pavilion well. Ren Yi knew that his strength was deteriorating, but he was still very confident in managing things. Lung Shiqi nodded and dismissed everyone, telling them to do what they needed to do. In fact, it was extremely disadvantageous for him to be away from the imperial capital right after he was promoted to Chief Ren. This was equivalent to losing the best opportunity to cultivate his trusted subordinates. However, he had already accepted the mission to destroy the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect. Moreover, he really did want to make a trip to the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect and take back the authority to supervise Pinghui County. Thus, this trip was unavoidable. Fortunately, even if he left, the Xingji Pavilion still had a group of people he brought over. Above him, there was also Eunuch Gao at the headquarters to help him take care of things, so there shouldn't be any problems. After dealing with all this, Lung Shiqi locked himself in the secret chamber. After becoming one of the 4 great chiefs, he realized that his cultivation was far from matching his current status. It was imperative that he improve his strength. Then, with a thought, he was teleported into the underworld and took out a mustard seed bracelet. This was Li Jueqing's mustard seed bracelet. Previously, he was afraid that there was a restriction in this mustard seed bracelet, so he didn't dare to open it. Now that he was in the underworld, he wasn't afraid even if there was a restriction. Lung Shiqi's mental power probed inside. As expected, it was blocked by a layer of power. He snorted coldly, and the sword of primordial spirit appeared and directly broke the restriction. However, the contents of the mustard seed bracelet immediately made Lung Shiqi lose his mind. It wasn't that he had never seen a huge amount of resources. When he found the Star Clan's secret treasure in Ningyan County, he also saw resources that were enough to shock the world. However, the resources in Li Jueqing's mustard seed bracelet could no longer be described as huge. It could be described as a moving treasure trove. The Star Clan's secret treasure trove only contained ores and materials. However, this mustard seed bracelet contained all kinds of resources. As long as one could think of it, it had it all. They were even piled up into small mountains. Spiritual stones, elixirs, spiritual weapons, heavenly materials and earthly treasures, formations, mystical items, and even cultivation methods and spiritual skills were all piled up in piles. Lung Shiqi was dazzled and overwhelmed. These resources were enough to support a top sect. It was obvious how much resources Li Jueqing had gathered over the years. After a long while, Lung Shiqi came back to his senses. Now that these resources were all his, he could confidently say that he didn't have to worry about resources anymore. Lung Shiqi collected his thoughts and first looked at the various cultivation methods and spiritual skills inside. Most of them were level 5 cultivation methods and above. There were even a few level 7 cultivation methods. There was even a level 8 cultivation method. Lung Shiqi's face lit up with joy. He took it out and wrote the words 16 days transformation method on it. Seeing these words, Lung Shiqi's expression changed. He had heard of this cultivation method before. This was the cultivation method that the Li family's patriarch had created back then. The Li family's patriarch did not have a teacher. After joining the Dark Thunder Guards, he cultivated many cultivation methods. Later, he took a different path and created an extremely profound cultivation method, which was the 16 days transformation method. The 16 days transformation method was both a cultivation method and a spiritual skill. It was all-encompassing. The Li family's patriarch had combined all kinds of spiritual skills into one extremely powerful move. They were fist, palm, finger, leg, saber, sword, staff, spear, halberd, axe, earth, water, wind, fire, defense and demon. Moreover, each of these spiritual skills was a rank 7 spiritual skill. Among them, Leng Shiqi had seen the mountain suppression, blade array, calling the wind, turning the cloud, and demon transformation. The Li family's patriarch's method was somewhat similar to Leng Shiqi's. However, Leng Shiqi relied on the system while the Li family's patriarch did not. From this, it could be seen that the Li family's patriarch was indeed an extremely talented person. Unfortunately, the Li family's descendants were not much. Even though there were a few experts, even Li Jucheng had only cultivated a few spiritual skills from the 16 days transformation method. In Leng Shiqi's hands, this cultivation method was actually used to its fullest potential. He simply used his unlimited skill points to cultivate all 16 spiritual skills to great perfection. Mastering 16 rank 7 spiritual skills caused Leng Shiqi's strength to soar. It also increased his chances of participating in the destruction of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect and seizing Pinghui County. Chapter 694. In order to increase his confidence, Leng Shiqi took out a pile of things and placed them in front of him. There were more than 300 black grasses, 2 Tiangang pills, a blood-colored insect that was as thin as a hair, and the Yin-Yang spirit gathering formation. He was going to break through to the 7th level of Gang Spirit Realm before going to Pinghui Prefecture. After he cultivated the rank 8 cultivation method, 16 days transformation's true solution, his cultivation had also increased by a portion. He was prepared to refine the remaining 300+ black grass and swallow the heavenly dipper pill to make a breakthrough. To ensure that nothing went wrong, he even took out a strange object called the Fiend Blood Thread Worm. It was found in Li Juecheng's mustard seed bracelet. It was something for Gang Spirit Realm cultivators to quickly break through their cultivation. However, this evil Gang Blood nematode also had a huge drawback, that was, it would affect the mind of the refiner. If one was not careful, one would be bitten by the evil spirit and suffer from Qigong deviation. Therefore, few people would use such an extreme method unless they were forced to. Of course, this didn't matter to Leng Shiqi. He had too many things on him that could suppress baleful aura. Besides, his evil spirit was horrible, so it was impossible for him to be bitten by the evil spirit of a small insect. After preparing all this, Leng Shiqi waved his hand, and a total of 1,000 mid-grade spiritual stones were embedded in the Yin-Yang gathering formation. Suddenly, the special spiritual power of the underworld swarmed in. Finally, he swallowed 2 Tiangang pills and the evil blood thread worm at the same time. The spiritual power in his body was surging, but it was all led into the Star Sea and turned into his cultivation. In the process, he constantly used the black mark to absorb the power of the mysterious grass. His spiritual power cultivation was growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. About 12 hours later, Leng Shiqi's body flashed with various colors of Gang spirit. The spiritual power within a few miles was constantly stirred, and his spiritual power suddenly soared. The 7th level of Gang Spirit Realm. Leng Shiqi exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, and a smile appeared on his face. The breakthrough was very smooth. Although there was only one level between the 6th level and the 7th level of Gang Spirit Realm, the gap between them was very big. The biggest difference was the thickness of Gang Spirit. He used his fingers as a sword, and an illusory spirit sword energy that was more than 100 meters long shot out. Even he was shocked by it. In his impression, even Yen Mu, who was at level 9 of Gang Spirit Realm in the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, could only reach this level with a level 7 spiritual sword. This was the most direct benefit of having a deep spiritual energy foundation. Although he had just broken through to the 7th level of Gang Spirit Realm, the thickness of his Gang Spirit was stronger than that of the 9th level of Gang Spirit Realm. "Kid, how is it that your strength can always improve so easily?" Nine Leaves' voice suddenly rang out. This also made Leng Shiqi's heart skip a beat. When he entered the underworld, he had inadvertently brought 9 Leave with him. How was he going to explain this to 9 Leave? As expected, 9 Leave immediately asked, Where is this place?" Leng Shiqi was going to give a perfunctory answer, but he suddenly remembered that there were 3 conditions for the underworld to level up again. They were to recruit 3 members of the underworld, collect 2 high-level souls, and have 40,000 system coins. When he was in the Void Scar Sky, he had already taken Yushu and Meng Ming into the underworld. Not long ago he killed Li Jueqing and collected a high-level soul. If he pulled 9 Leave into the underworld he would meet most of the conditions for leveling up. Originally he was going to invite Wu Diao or Di Chuan, but now he thought that 9 Leave might be a better choice. First of all, he and 9 Leave had signed an equal blood contract. They could not harm each other, so there was some guarantee. Moreover, he and 9 Leave had always gotten along in the form of a deal. Although they did not completely trust each other, they still had at least credibility. He immediately said, "To tell you the truth, this is a small secret realm that I obtained by chance. I used this secret realm as the foundation to create a force called the Underworld. I would like to invite Senior 9 Leave to join the Underworld." "You actually obtained a secret realm. Your luck is really enviable." 9 Leave said in surprise, "As for whether I join your force or not, I don't care. As long as the benefits are there, everything is negotiable." Hearing this condition, Leng Shiqi smiled inwardly. If there was one thing that he did not lack now, it would be resources. Without another word, he took out a small portion of high-level materials that were suitable for 9 Leave from his mustard seed bracelet, including several rank 6 Yao cores. 9 Leave immediately agreed with a smile. Leng Shiqi took 9 Leave into the underworld through the territory system and said, "Senior 9 Leave, the underworld also has a mysterious power. All members of the underworld will receive a legacy power. Senior, you should show your true body and see what kind of legacy you can obtain." "Oh, there's such a good thing." 9 Leave's soul came out and returned to her true body. However, she did not take the legacy that Leng Shiqi mentioned too seriously. After all, 9 Leave's true body was a precious Yao beast with inherited memories. Human legacies were not of much use to her. After 9 Leave's true body appeared, Leng Shiqi raised his head and looked in the direction of Fengdu City. After a few breaths, purple Yao Qi surged towards him. 9 Leave was also shocked by this movement. She subconsciously wanted to dodge, but Leng Shiqi immediately shouted, "Senior, don't move." 9 Leave hesitated for a moment but still chose to believe in Leng Shiqi. Immediately after, Yao Qi shrouded 9 Leave, and at the same time that familiar voice sounded again. Title: Ghost Emperor Yao Yi of the Northern Wasteland. Ghost Emperor. Leng Shiqi looked at 9 Leave who was wrapped in Yao Qi. She received the title of Ghost Emperor of the 5 Directions on the same level as Delta Origi. However, this Ghost Emperor Yao Yi of the Northern Wasteland was not the only one in his memory. After the inheritance of Delta Origi and 9 Leave, Leng Shiqi guessed that the underworld would give different titles according to a person's potential and characteristics. It could also be said that the underworld would give the most suitable title for you. While 9 Leave was receiving the inheritance, Leng Shiqi directly went to find Li Jueqing's soul and turned Li Jueqing into his own ghost slave. When this ghost slave was formed, he had the strength of the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm. It seemed that the strength of a ghost slave was indeed closely related to his previous cultivation. If Li Zhangtao and Li Juning were counted, his current 3 ghost slaves were all masters of the unity of heaven and men realm of the Li family. The Li family had been trying to kill Leng Shiqi. Now he was not dead, but the Li family was destroyed first. Even the strongest members of the Li family had become his ghost slave. It had to be said that this was a great irony. Then Leng Shiqi looked at the requirements for upgrading the underworld. The current level of the territory of the underworld, Stage 3. The requirements for upgrading the territory of the underworld. 1. Recruit 3 members of the underworld March 3rd. 2. Collect 2 high-level souls 12/3. 3. 40,000 system coins. He murmured, "Now there is only 1 high-level soul left to upgrade. Let's do this in Pinghui Prefecture." Chapter 695. The next morning, Leng Shiqi took Yan Ming and Deng Xinlei, 2 masters of oneness of heaven and men, to the interfield transmission formation of the imperial capital. When they came in, a large number of people knelt down. "Greetings, Supervisor Liu." The news of Leng Shiqi becoming the new chief steward of the 4 great generals spread throughout the entire imperial city in a single night. Everyone who heard this news almost dropped their jaws in shock. No one dared to believe it, and many people even doubted the authenticity of the news. It was not until the Imperial Palace and the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards issued the appointment at the same time that people had to believe it. His Majesty really chose a junior of Gang Spirit Realm to be the 4 supervisors. For a time, Leng Shiqi became the center of discussion in the imperial capital. Some slandered him, some envied him, and many people were guessing what Lei Qingjuan's intention was. But no matter how others looked down on him and thought that he was not worthy of the position, he was now the 4 supervisors of the Dark Thunder Guards, and he had the power to kill countless people. Anyone who saw him had to kneel down and salute him even if they were unwilling. Leng Shiqi waved his hand casually and said, "Get up." However, they did not directly transmit to Pinghui Prefecture, but stopped here to wait for a person. Soon, a man in shabby clothes with messy hair and white beard, who looked like he had not bathed for several months, came in. He looked around and reached out to rub the dust off his body. When he saw Leng Shiqi, he immediately walked over. "You are Lu Xingji, right? Just call me old man. Let's go to Pinghui Prefecture." Leng Shiqi looked at the man suspiciously. Was this old man the master of Imperial Hall of Worship who went to Pinghui Prefecture with him to destroy the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, an expert of Tianyuan realm? This was not the same as those high and mighty experts of Tianyuan realm he had seen before. But now there were not many people who dared to call him by his name, and others did not know that he was going to Pinghui Prefecture. So from this point of view, this old man might really be an expert of Tianyuan realm. To be on the safe side, Leng Shiqi walked over and cupped his hands. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly didn't know how to address the other party. Did she really call him old man? He simply said, "Senior, you must be an expert from the Imperial Hall of Worship. There's no need to call me senior. Just call me old man. I don't dare to call myself an expert. Killing an old fart like the Thousand Illusion Sword Master is not a problem." Leng Shiqi's eyes twitched. The Thousand Illusion Sword Master was the great elder of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, the only Sky Origin Stage cultivator. Good heavens! A Sky Origin Stage cultivator has become an old bastard in the old man's mouth. Kill him as he pleases? Were all the experts of the Imperial family's Hall of Worship this arrogant? However, this also confirmed that this person was indeed an expert who had participated in the destruction of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. Leng Shiqi did not dare to be negligent. He also remembered that Eunuch Gao had said that this person had some relationship with him, but he did not know what that relationship was. Don't be long-winded. Let's hurry to Pinghui Prefecture. The old man pulled Leng Shiqi into the interdomain transfer formation. He seemed to be quite amiable. Leng Shiqi suppressed his doubts and said to the person in charge of activating the transfer formation, "Begin the transfer." Yes. Immediately, the transfer formation rotated and Leng Shiqi and the other 3 figures gradually disappeared. In an instant, they arrived at Pinghui Prefecture, which was tens of thousands of miles away. However, the interdomain transfer formation was not built in Pinghui Prefecture. It was built in a city at the edge of Pinghui Prefecture. This city was connected to 2 other prefectures, so it was very convenient to go anywhere. The 4 of them did not disturb the people here. Instead, they walked out of the city. As the old man walked, he suddenly turned his head and said, "I heard that you can fly?" Leng Shiqi nodded and said, "I do have the means to fly." "That's good. Let's see who can fly faster with each of us carrying 1 person." As soon as the old man finished speaking, he pulled Yan Ming and flew away. In the blink of an eye, only a black shadow was left. Leng Shiqi was stunned for a moment and did not react. Flying speed? What was going on? The brain circuit of a Sky Origin Stage expert is too strange. Leng Shiqi muttered to himself. Then he pulled Deng Xinlei and spread out 2 pairs of colorful wings behind him and soared into the sky. Soaring above the 9 heavens, Leng Shiqi's speed was extremely fast. Soon he would catch up with the old man. Sky Origin Stage experts were able to fly because they could still control a certain degree of heaven and earth. Wherever they were, they could claim to be a part of heaven and earth. Flying in the air was not a problem. However, unless they were people who specialized in flying, most of the Sky Origin Stage experts were not very fast. Gradually, the old man was about to be caught up. The old man also felt that Leng Shiqi was slowly approaching. He suddenly felt a little embarrassed. The corner of his mouth curled up into a smile. In an instant, there were dark clouds everywhere, thunder rumbled, and endless thunder from the 9 heavens raged. Leng Shiqi was flying at an extremely fast speed when he suddenly plunged into the thunder clouds. He was shocked at first, but he realized that the power of these thunderbolts was not particularly strong, so he knew that the old man did not really want to make a move. He immediately activated the wild demon blood beast body and the golden light indestructible divine art. Terrifying thunderbolts struck his body and immediately produced a clang-clang sound, but they could not hurt him at all. Unfortunately, Deng Xinlei was knocked out by the sudden thunderbolt. Leng Shiqi had to use the purple pole thunderstorm to form a lightning field around Deng Xinlei to protect him. The four wings on his back shook and in a few breaths he forced his way out of the thundercloud. As soon as Leng Shiqi left the thundercloud, the sound of clapping hands could be heard. Clap, clap, clap. The old man stood 3,000 feet in the sky and clapped his hands as he watched Leng Shiqi pass through the thundercloud unscathed. Yan Ming floated beside him in a coma. The old man praised, "Not bad, not bad. As expected of the leader of the elite association. You did not lose face for the elite hall." Elite hall? Leng Shiqi was puzzled. He guessed that the old man did not really want to attack him, but he had never heard of the name elite hall. The old man raised his hand and threw over something that looked like a token. Leng Shiqi caught it in his hand. It was a token with the word, elite, engraved on it. The old man explained, "This is the identity token of the elite hall. It's normal that you haven't heard of the elite hall before, because there are less than 100 people who know about the elite hall. Only the previous leaders of the elite association are qualified to join this elite hall." Leng Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. If this was the case, then the old man in front of him was also the leader of the elite association of a certain session. No wonder Eunuch Gao said that he had some relationship with the old man. "Yes, I was the leader of the elite association of 42 years ago." The old man said proudly, "Of course, not every leader of the elite association is qualified to join the elite hall. Even if you are at the late stage of gang spirit realm at a young age and have become one of the 4 directors, you still have to pass my test. Although I don't mobilize the chi of heaven and earth, it is not something that an ordinary oneness of heaven and men realm can survive. However, you can pass through my thundercloud dimming formation so safely. It can be seen that you are worthy of your reputation." Speaking of this, the old man pointed to Yan Ming and Deng Xinlei who had fainted and continued, "You have the strength not weaker than the late stage of oneness of heaven and men realm and gang spirit realm, and you are in a high position. Only then are you really qualified to join the elite association." Chapter 696. Leng Shiqi did not stand on ceremony and accepted the elite hall's token. According to the old man, those who could enter the elite hall were almost all abnormal people. Even if he just casually made friends with a few of them, it would still be very beneficial. Just as he thought of this, the old man pointed a finger at Leng Shiqi, and a bolt of lightning entered between his eyebrows. A chant immediately appeared in his mind. It was the 7th level spiritual skill, Purple Lightning Punishment All. "This is my greeting gift to you. It's not anything good, so don't mind it," the old man said casually. Leng Shiqi did not expect that the old man could casually throw out a rank 7 spiritual skill. One had to know that a rank 7 spiritual skill was a treasure that would be fought over anywhere. It could even become the most precious treasure of a first-rate faction. This further proved that the elite hall's potential was terrifying. "Thank you, senior." Leng Shiqi cupped his fists. The old man revealed a dissatisfied expression. "If you continue to call me senior, I will really get angry. The people in the elite hall all call each other brothers. They don't care about the red tape. You can just call me brother." "This thank you, brother." Leng Shiqi said these words awkwardly. The old man laughed and put his arm around Leng Shiqi's shoulder. "That's right. Let's quickly destroy the 1,000 Illusion Sword sect. If there is a chance in the future, I will introduce you to the other brothers in the elite hall." "Alright, the elite hall is a hidden faction. Don't tell others about it so easily. Brother, don't worry. I know what to do." "That's good. Next, I will go to the 1,000 Illusion Sword sect to guard it in case that old man, 1,000 Illusion Sword Sovereign, plays any tricks." The old man did not even finish speaking before he flew away. Leng Shiqi shrugged. This old man's temper seemed a little strange. However, after interacting with him for a short period of time, he did not have to be so cautious. He had not felt this way in a long time. He did not want to delay important matters, so he brought Yan Ming and Deng Xinlei and flew towards Pinghui City. It was not until sunset that the 3 of them arrived at Pinghui City. At this time, Yan Ming and Deng Xinlei were following behind Leng Shiqi with gloomy faces. They had fainted for no reason and felt very embarrassed. When Leng Shiqi walked to the entrance of Pinghui City's Dark Thunder Manor, there were already hundreds of people gathered here. When they saw Leng Shiqi, who was dressed in a black and red official robe, they all knelt down and shouted, "Greetings, Chief Steward Liu. No need to be so courteous. Who is the patrol inspector of Pinghui County?" Leng Shiqi asked. The person standing at the very front replied, "This humble one is Wu Yijing, the patrol inspector of the Dark Thunder Guards of Pinghui County. You used to work for Li Jueqing?" Wu Yi's heart skipped a beat. The new general manager didn't welcome them or ask about the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. Instead he asked this question. It seemed like he didn't come with good intentions. Wu Yi smiled and said, "In reply to my lord, the previous patrol inspector was dismissed a few days ago. This humble one also just took up the post." Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes. He secretly thought that Chief Steward Hai's actions were really fast. He continued to ask, "Then do you know which general manager is in charge of Pinghui County?" Wu Yi was speechless. According to the scope of supervision, Pinghui County was indeed under Leng Shiqi's supervision. However, 2 days ago, Chief Steward Hai had already taken over the supervision of Pinghui County. He, Wu Yi, could also be considered one of Chief Steward Hai's people. However, he didn't dare to say such words in front of Leng Shiqi. He had specially inquired about Leng Shiqi's character and knew that he was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance and couldn't tolerate sand in his eyes. No matter how weak Leng Shiqi was, he was still one of the 4 general managers. If he really angered him, he definitely wouldn't have a good time. Wu Yi unknowingly broke out in a layer of cold sweat. It was really uncomfortable for him to be sandwiched between the 2 general managers. At this time, a spirit cultivator at the early stage of unity of heaven and man realm behind Wu Yi stepped forward and said, "Chief Steward Lu, this subordinate thinks that the most important thing right now is to assist the East Guarding Thunderflame Army to destroy the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect. Please enter the residence to discuss important matters." He came to help, but Leng Shiqi's eyes flashed with a cold light. "This person looks a little familiar." The person smiled and said, "Lord Lu, this subordinate was originally a eunuch under Chief Steward Hai Jianghu. Now I have been transferred to Pinghui County." "Then what position do you hold now?" Jianghu opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. In fact, he was sent by Chief Steward Hai to supervise. To put it bluntly, he was an imperial envoy. However, in reality he didn't have any position. This subordinate hasn't received a position yet. In the end, he braced himself and said it. Leng Shiqi snorted coldly. With a flip of his hand, the sky suddenly darkened and a terrifying spiritual pressure suddenly appeared. Everyone raised their heads in shock. It turned out that a huge mountain had suddenly appeared in the sky. It was shining with boundless golden light as it slowly descended, as if it was suppressing everything. 16 days transformation truth, mountain suppression. Everyone was stunned for a moment. How could this Lord Lu make a move just like that? And looking at this posture, it was not a spiritual technique that a spirit cultivator of the spirit gang realm could use. Wu Yi was the first to react. He pulled back and shouted at the same time, "Retreat, retreat quickly." Fortunately, the speed of the mountain falling was not fast. Everyone activated their spiritual power and finally ran out of the range of the mountain. Jianghu also wanted to escape, but he couldn't. Jianghu was about to turn around and escape, but there was a terrible gravity at the bottom of the mountain. All of a sudden his legs sank deep into the ground. He suddenly couldn't move. In horror, he immediately mobilized the spiritual power of heaven and earth around him to try to break free. However, a mysterious starry sky formation appeared at the bottom of the mountain. The spiritual power that Jianghu had just gathered dissipated without a trace. Jianghu's eyes widened. He was really stunned. He was a master of the unity of heaven and man realm, but he was powerless in front of Leng Shiqi, who was in the spirit gang realm. What made him even more frightened was that he saw Leng Shiqi's eyes were full of murderous intent. Jianghu only realized at this moment that Leng Shiqi wanted to kill him. "No, Lord Lu, you can't kill." However, before he could even finish his sentence, the gigantic mountain peak had already crashed down, causing the entire Pinghui city to tremble violently. Jianghu's corpse was instantly obliterated. Even the Dark Thunder Mansion in the Pinghui Prefecture was turned into ruins under this blow. Many Dark Thunder Guards and all the people in the city looked at all this in horror. People who didn't know the situation thought that someone had come to attack Pinghui City. And the Dark Thunder Guards, including Wu Yi, were even more shocked. Leng Shiqi, with the cultivation of the late stage of the Spirit Gang realm, killed a spirit cultivator of the unity of heaven and man realm in seconds. This level of battle prowess was too terrifying. Leng Shiqi clapped his hands as if he was driving away a fly. "Do you have the right to speak here?" Chapter 697. Leng Shiqi's killing of Zhang and Su shocked everyone, including Yan Ming and Deng Xinlei who came with him. At this moment they finally understood why Leng Shiqi was qualified to be one of the 4 directors. He was so powerful at the late stage of gang spirit realm. When Leng Shiqi broke through the oneness of heaven and men realm, he would have the power comparable to the late stage of oneness of heaven and men realm. What would happen when his cultivation reached the late stage of oneness of heaven and men realm? Hiss. Both of them secretly sucked in a breath of cold air and didn't dare to think about it anymore. However, in their hearts, there was no longer any disrespect for Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi stepped on the ruins of Dark Thunder Mansion and came to Wu Yi. He asked the question he had asked before, "Do you know which director is in charge of Pinghui Prefecture?" Wu Yi also had the cultivation of the middle stage of oneness of heaven and men realm and was now the inspector. However, when he was asked by Leng Shiqi, his body trembled. Zhang and Su were not only masters of oneness of heaven and men realm but also trusted subordinates of Director Hai. Leng Shiqi killed them without any hesitation. He really didn't care about Director Hai at all. He took a deep breath and said, "It belongs to Director Liu." "Very good." Leng Shiqi patted Wu Yi on the shoulder and said, "Order people to clean up a place and prepare for the meeting." Wu Yi stiffly turned around and gave the order. In just a quarter of an hour, a decent meeting hall had been built. Leng Shiqi sat on the high seat and said, "Tell me, what's the situation now?" Wu Yi bowed slightly and said, "Your Excellency, the Eastern Thunder Flame Army has entered Pinghui Prefecture in succession these 2 days. Under the cover of the Dark Thunder Guards, they have scattered and hidden near the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. In addition, the city guards around the Discipline Commission and the Thousand Illusion Sword sect are ready to attack at any time. As long as General Lin, one of the 3 generals of the Eastern Thunder Flame Army, and the masters of the Imperial Hall of Worship arrive, they can attack the Thousand Illusion Sword sect at any time." "Yes." Leng Shiqi nodded. It seemed that Wu Yi was quite capable. He had almost done everything. However, Leng Shiqi was still a little worried. After all, the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect was a top sect that had been famous for a long time. It was definitely not something that could be destroyed so easily. He asked, "Are there any other problems that have not been resolved?" "My lord, there are 2 headaches right now." Wu Yi stretched out 2 fingers. "First of all, because we've kept the information confidential, the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect has yet to notice the impending crisis. Therefore, there were also some disciples who went out to do things or went down the mountain to gain experience. These people were quite a lot. There were at least 1,000 of them. If they were not eliminated, there would be trouble in the future. Although I have already ordered my subordinates to search for the disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, I only know the whereabouts of 70% of them. Furthermore, these people are scattered all over the place. Some of them aren't even in Pinghui County. It will be difficult to eliminate them all." When Leng Shiqi heard this, a thoughtful look appeared on his face. It was indeed difficult to track down all the external disciples. The Dark Lightning Guards information network was spread all over the place, but they had limited manpower. The best way to solve this problem was to have the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect take the initiative to recall those disciples. However, they couldn't let them know that the sect was in trouble. Otherwise, some of the disciples might just run away. "Are there any special days in Pinghui County or the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect recently?" Leng Shiqi suddenly had an idea. Wu Yi also guessed Leng Shiqi's intention. He pondered for a moment before saying, "No. In fact, the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sovereign will hold a birthday banquet every 10 years. However, the most recent one was 4 years ago. In addition, the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect also holds a sect competition every 3 years. Unfortunately, it was held last year. It seems that there are no major events that are worthy of the sect recalling all the disciples recently." "No, they are," Leng Shiqi said with certainty. "You should know that the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect has joined the 9th Prince, Lei Haoqing, right?" "Yes, this point is already known to all." Wu Yi didn't know why Leng Shiqi would suddenly change the topic. Lei Haoge had violated His Majesty's taboo and was already under house arrest. What did this have to do with the destruction of the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect? A cold smile appeared on Leng Shiqi's face. Right now, not many people know the truth of what happened in the imperial capital. If we send someone to inform the Thousand Illusion Sword sect that Lei Haoqing obtained the position of Crown Prince, how do you think they'll react? Without a doubt, his eyes lit up and he said loudly, "They'll definitely celebrate. After all, this is the hope of the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect." However, the people that the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect sent to the imperial capital are all dead. Without their message, how could the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect believe it so easily? "You don't have to worry about that. I have my ways. What you need to do is to spread the news and reach a consensus with the city lords of the imperial capital and every city. You can't afford to make any mistakes," Leng Shiqi instructed. This humble one understands. What's the second problem? Wu Yi couldn't help but frown. That's the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect's protective formation. This formation is called the Thousand Illusionary Nine Pavilion Sword Formation. It's a killing formation, an illusion formation, and a trap formation. It's very difficult to deal with. Even if we have two heavenly origin stage experts, if the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect and the other experts personally take charge of the formation, we'll probably suffer a lot of casualties. Leng Shiqi also felt that this was a little difficult to deal with. This was the foundation of a top sect. Even if the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect had declined for decades, as long as the Thousand Illusionary Nine Pavilion Sword Formation existed, it would still be a colossus even if it didn't have a heavenly origin stage expert. Unless it was a matter of sacrificing lives, it wouldn't be easy to break the formation and destroy the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect. Leng Shiqi stood up as he thought of this. How long will it take for the Eastern Suppression Thunderflame Army to be in place? About 2 more days. I'll leave these matters to you. Yan Ming and Deng Xinlei will assist you. Leng Shiqi pointed at the two of them. Wu Yi knew that Yan Ming and Deng Xinlei's roles were actually the same as Zhang Hesu's. Now that he had acknowledged Leng Shiqi's strength and methods, he could only be manipulated by him. After Leng Shiqi said, "I will go and take a look myself," he left Pinghui City in a carefree manner. Very quickly, Leng Shiqi directly teleported to the vicinity of the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect. He hid his figure and even used the Gu King to help him conceal his aura. He opened his supercilious eyes and began to slowly walk around the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect. He wanted to find some flaws and breakthrough points. However, the process didn't go smoothly. This was because the mountain where the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect was located originally formed a formation. It was on this foundation that the later generations set up the Thousand Illusionary Nine Pavilion Sword Formation. It was almost impossible to find any flaws. Just as Leng Shiqi was a little helpless, he suddenly discovered a familiar spirit aura in his supercilious eyes. He hadn't seen that aura for a long time, but at this moment, Leng Shiqi smiled gently and quickly approached. The owner of that spirit aura was the abandoned disciple of the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect, Oziu. Chapter 698. Now Oziu had reached the early stage of Gang Spirit Realm, and his temperament had changed greatly. He was no longer Yushu but full of calmness and restraint. At this moment he was standing at the top of a hill, looking at the sect of the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect in the distance. No one knew what he was thinking. Suddenly a figure fell from the sky. Oziu stabbed out with his sword without turning his head. Suddenly the dreamlike sword light swept in all directions. At the same time, several illusions were mixed in the sword light, making it impossible to guard against. However, the figure held a green feather fan in his hand. After a while he raised the wind and swept the world. All the sword light was swept away. Oziu frowned and turned around. His eyes were full of a look as if he was facing a great enemy. However, when he saw the person who came, he put away his posture and said, "How should I call you?" The person who came was Leng Shiqi. He smiled, took back the green feather wind forest fan and said, "My real name is Lu Xingji." Lu Xingji. Oziu murmured, "I seem to have heard of it somewhere." Now the news that Leng Shiqi had become one of the 4 directors had spread to the world. Almost everyone knew his identity, but Oziu hadn't been to the town in recent days, so he didn't know the specific identity of Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi looked at Oziu, who had just entered the Gang Spirit Realm, and there was a faint aura of isolation on his body. He must have never gone out of the small secret realm of the Southern Divine Peak. He didn't come out until he reached the Gang Spirit Realm. "Brother Ziyu, now that you have broken out of seclusion and appeared near the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect, what are your plans?" Oziu didn't answer but asked, "Why is Brother Lu here? You must not be here to see the scenery." "Of course not." Leng Shiqi sized up Oziu and guessed his purpose for coming here. "Perhaps our purpose is the same." Leng Shiqi remembered that Oziu had been tricked by the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect back then and had almost been soul-searched into a fool. Later on, he had managed to escape with great difficulty, but his family had all died at the hands of the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect. The Thousand Illusion Sword Sect also accused him of having an affair with a witch and betraying the sect, making him unable to raise his head for the rest of his life. This kind of hatred could be said to be irreconcilable. At that time, Oziu said that he wouldn't come out of seclusion until he reached the spirit realm. But now he reached the Gang Spirit Realm. and he specially came to the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. What did he want to do? Leng Shiqi didn't believe that he was here to enjoy the scenery. Therefore Leng Shiqi reckoned that Oziu was most likely here for revenge. Leng Shiqi's biggest headache right now was the sect protecting formation of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. If he wanted to destroy the Thousand Illusion Sword sect with the least amount of casualties, he had to find a way to break the sword formation of the Thousand Illusions' 9 pavilions. It was possible to use human lives to force a breakthrough, but what Leng Shiqi wanted was credit. Of course, the fewer people who died, the more credit he would get. Therefore he did not want to use this method unless he had no other choice. At this moment, Oziu's unexpected appearance gave Leng Shiqi a chance. Oziu was the most outstanding disciple of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. He might know something about the Thousand Illusion 9 pavilion sword formation. Oziu looked up and down at Leng Shiqi. He couldn't see through Leng Shiqi anymore. He only knew that if Leng Shiqi wanted to kill him, it wouldn't take much effort. He simply said, "Brother Liu, what do you want to say? Just say it." Brother Ziyu is straightforward. Leng Shiqi clapped his hands and set up a restriction around him. He said, "To tell you the truth, I'm here to take revenge on the Thousand Illusion Sword sect." Revenge? What enmity do you have with the Thousand Illusion Sword sect? Ziyu didn't quite believe his words. Brother Ziyu, have you forgotten that when I left the small secret realm, you specially reminded me to be careful of the people from the Thousand Illusion Sword sect? As you expected, there was indeed a spirit gang realm expert from the Thousand Illusion Sword sect hiding on the southern divine peak. I almost died at the hands of that person. If it weren't for the help of a benefactor, I'm afraid I would have been buried in the southern divine peak. Do you think I have any enmity with the Thousand Illusion Sword sect? Leng Shiqi explained. Oziu's face also showed some disgust. The people of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect are really so despicable and shameless. If what you said is true, I think we might as well cooperate. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi thought to himself that it was as expected. Brother Ziyu, do you have the same idea as me? That's great. With your understanding of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect and my forces, we might be able to shake the Thousand Illusion Sword sect if we join forces. You still have forces? How strong are they? Leng Shiqi smiled mysteriously. In short, they're not weak. Now, as long as we can break the sect protecting formation of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, I'm confident that I can deal a heavy blow to the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. You're so confident? Oziu asked suspiciously. He knew the Thousand Illusion Sword sect very well. Even if the Thousand Illusion Sword sect had begun to decline, there were still many experts in the Unity of Heaven realm and dozens of Spirit Gang realm experts in the sect. Even without the Thousand Illusion 9 pavilion sword formation, unless another top sect came to attack, it would be wishful thinking to deal a heavy blow to the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. Leng Shiqi saw Oziu's suspicion. Brother Ziyu, you've been in seclusion all year round, so you're very isolated from the outside world. Do you know that the Thousand Illusion Sword sect has long been involved in the fight for the throne? The Thousand Illusion Sword sect wants to take a gamble. If the prince they support wins the throne, then the Thousand Illusion Sword sect may even become the state religion of the Thunderfire dynasty. The danger of decline will naturally be easily solved. Unfortunately, the 9th prince they support has already been defeated, and the Thousand Illusion Sword sect has attracted the hostility of the Thunderfire dynasty. Now, the Dark Thunder Guards and the Discipline Commission in Pinghui Prefecture are preparing to attack the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. A portion of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect's experts have already died in the imperial capital. In addition, the Thousand Illusion Sword Venerable's chi and blood have already declined. How much strength does he have left? Therefore, the Thousand Illusion Sword sect is facing a huge crisis. If it's not handled well, a large amount of territory will be taken away by the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards. In the future, when the Thousand Illusion Sword Venerable reaches the end of his life, the Thousand Illusion Sword sect will be in danger of being exterminated. And I am the supervisor of the Dark Thunder Guards. This time, I'm here to put pressure on the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. As long as Brother Ziyu helps me, the Thousand Illusion Sword sect's vitality will definitely be greatly damaged. This is what you and I both want to see. Leng Shiqi's words were 70% true and 30% false. This kind of lie was the most difficult to distinguish. After hearing this, Oziu fell into deep thought. After a while he said, "All of this is just your side of the story. How can I believe you?" Leng Shiqi shook his head and said, "You can choose not to believe me, but I have no need to lie to you. Moreover, what I said is a secret. Outsiders have no way of knowing, and I can't prove it to you. In fact, Is it really that important whether you believe me or not? Our goal is the same and that's enough. Ozu hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, "You're right. Speak, what do you want me to do?" Chapter 699. The next morning, a travel-worn disciple of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect rushed to the mountain gate. Several disciples guarding the mountain immediately stopped him. One of them asked, "Senior brother Ji Guang, didn't you go to the capital? Why are you back?" Ji Guang hugged the person's shoulder and said excitedly, "Good news, good news. The ninth prince has obtained the position of crown prince and will soon ascend the throne. At that time, our Thousand Illusion Sword sect will be conferred as the state religion." What? Is this true? A few of the disciples nearby also gathered around, and a burst of joy appeared on their faces. The sect had long since submitted to the ninth prince, Lei Haoqing. This was something everyone knew, so the disciples all hoped that the sect would make the right bet. This way, not only would the Thousand Illusion Sword sect obtain a huge amount of resources, after becoming the state religion, they would be able to ignore the Dark Thunder Guards and the Discipline Commission and wantonly steal talented disciples. Then, the Thousand Illusion Sword sect's predicament of lacking manpower would naturally no longer exist. Now that they heard Ji Guang's words, they were unable to contain their joy. Although they were still asking if it was true, they already believed it in their hearts. "Of course it's true," Ji Guang said firmly. "Quickly take me to see the sect master. I want to report this good news to him." "Okay, but senior brother Ji Guang, as long as you enter the sect, you still have to be checked. Please forgive me. This is the sect's rule. Take it," Ji Guang said as he handed over a white jade stone. This was the unique identity token of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect disciples. The disciple guarding the mountain took out a palm-sized disc and placed the jade stone inside. Immediately, Ji Guang's name appeared on the disc. "Senior brother Ji Guang, please take the token. We will go see the sect master now. Let's go, let's go." The two immediately walked through the mountain gate and quickly walked towards the peak of the sect. This Ji Guang also secretly let out a sigh of relief. He was also secretly glad that he had met Ozu. Otherwise, no matter how exquisite his disguise was, he would have been discovered as a fake at the mountain gate. That's right, in reality this Ji Guang was the Leng Shiqi after changing his appearance and cultivation. At first, he thought of a way to get the Thousand Illusion Sword sect to call back all their disciples, which was to pretend to be disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect and give them false information. However, after communicating with Ozu, he found out that all the disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect had to be inspected before entering the mountain gate. Even the elders had to be inspected. Leng Shiqi immediately contacted the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards and sent over the identity token of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect's accompanying disciple, which led to this scene. In order not to be discovered by the experts of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, he had specially learned the first few levels of the Thousand Illusion Sword technique from Ozu. At this moment he was circulating this technique in his body. Unless it was someone very familiar with him, no one would be able to tell that he was not Ji Guang at all. Soon, Leng Shiqi met the current sect leader of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, Wei Qian. Wei Qian was a great master at the peak of the oneness of heaven and man realm. It was said that he was only 60 or 70 years old this year, which was considered very young for someone in the oneness of heaven and man realm. However, when Leng Shiqi saw him, most of Wei Qian's hair had already turned white, and even his face had many wrinkles. To be able to make a dignified unity of heaven cultivator like this, it could be seen that Wei Qian was really mentally and physically exhausted for the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. As soon as Leng Shiqi walked in, he happily recounted the matter. At first, Wei Qian was not as happy as the disciples guarding the mountain. Instead, he did not dare to believe it. "Is what you said true? What evidence do you have? Why didn't Yen Mu send the message through the sound transmission formation, and instead let you come all the way here to report?" Wei Qian asked 3 important questions in a row. Leng Shiqi was naturally prepared. He replied, "Sect leader, Elder Yen displayed his might in Void Scar Sky and snatched the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl that symbolizes the position of the Crown Prince. He seized the position of the Eastern Palace for the 9th Prince. However, because of this, he was seriously injured and is still unconscious. Everyone in the Imperial capital knows about this. However, the 9th Prince has not been officially conferred the position of Eastern Palace, so the news has not spread. If sect leader does not believe me, you can ask around for news from the Imperial capital. It is absolutely true. I believe this news will spread throughout the Thunderfire dynasty in a few days. Speaking of this, Wei Qian showed a bit of joy and also a bit of relief. Good, you have all done well. Wei Qian praised. I will immediately report this matter to the Grand Elder. You can go and rest first. You will definitely be rewarded. Leng Shiqi's face lit up with joy. Many thanks, sect leader. This disciple will take his leave first. He walked out of the hall and thought to himself, the first step has finally been successful. Leng Shiqi was not worried that Wei Qian would not rush all the disciples back. It had to be known that the more powerful a sect was, the more they cared about their reputation. The Thousand Illusionary Sword sect had been weak for decades, and their days were getting worse and worse. The first-rate sects in Pinghui Prefecture were no longer as respectful to them as before. Therefore, the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect finally had a chance to turn things around. They would definitely not give up this opportunity to increase their reputation. Leng Shiqi was sure that the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect would definitely rush all the disciples to celebrate. They would also tell all the sects in Pinghui Prefecture about this matter and show off. Right now, the most important thing for Leng Shiqi was another matter, and that was the Thousand Illusionary Nine Pavilion Sword formation. After leaving Wei Qian's hall, Leng Shiqi found Ji Guang's residence by beating around the bush. Then he disguised himself and secretly snuck out. Soon he arrived at an inconspicuous hill in the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect. He looked at the bottomless pool in front of him and muttered, "Is this the place?" Then he opened his hand and a person suddenly appeared beside him. Was Oziu. Oziu didn't come from anywhere else, nor did he hide. He came from Leng Shiqi's underworld. After Oziu agreed to join forces with Leng Shiqi invited him to join the underworld. This Oziu was originally a one-in-a-million genius. Later on, he even obtained the inheritance of the Divine Dream Palace. In the future, he would definitely become an expert who could intimidate a region. He was definitely qualified to join the underworld. Moreover, Leng Shiqi had some friendship with him back then. Now that they were on the same side, Leng Shiqi decided to invite him to join the underworld. And the inheritance and title that Oziu obtained from the underworld was the 10 halls Yama Luan Huan Wang. It was worth mentioning that after Leng Shiqi killed Zhang Hesu in Pinghui City, he also met the conditions for the underworld to level up. However, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to escape when the underworld leveled up. Seeing that a great battle was about to happen, he planned to level up the underworld after destroying the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect just in case. Oziu walked to the edge of the deep pool and gently stirred it a few times. He said, "That's right. This is one of the 9 array cores of the Thousand Illusionary 9 Pavilion Sword formation. As long as he could get rid of the Thousand Illusions 9 Pavilion Sword formation, there would be no more trouble in attacking the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. This encounter with Oziu had really helped him a lot. In that case, we'll be rid of Brother Ziyu. This thing can help us pass on information." Leng Shiqi took out a small ball and handed it to him. This was actually what Li Jueqing used to use in the past. Li Jueqing had planted spies around Eunuch Gao and Leng Shiqi. As long as there was important information, it would be passed on through this thing. Now it had fallen into the hands of Leng Shiqi. He left Oziu here to continue looking for the formation cores and tampering with them, while he himself teleported back to Pinghui City through the Fate skill. After a day, when Leng Shiqi saw Wu Yi again, he found that he was standing in front of a burly man with thick eyebrows, bowing his head and waist. Seeing Leng Shiqi return, he hurriedly said, "Lord Lu, this is General Lin, one of the 3 generals of the East Guarding Thunder Flame Army. General Lin, this is the new chief of the Dark Thunder Guards, Lord Lu." General Lin was clad in armor. Just by standing there, he gave people a feeling of unparalleled dominance. He was an expert of the Tianyuan realm who guarded a region. He said in a very deep voice, "You are Lu Xingji. You have become one of the 4 chiefs in the Gang Spirit realm. You are quite capable." "General Lin, you flatter me." Leng Shiqi said modestly, "I heard that General Lin once guarded the customs and defeated tens of thousands of troops from overseas countries by yourself. Your courage is admirable." General Lin's name was Lin Yuanliang. He was one of the 3 generals of the East Guarding Thunder Flame Army and was responsible for guarding the coastal border of Donglin County. The Falling Star continent was surrounded by the sea. Naturally, there were many islands. Over time, some sects, forces and dynasties of various sizes would form. 10 years ago, the countries of the East Sea tried to plot against Donglin County. They were quite smart. They bypassed the border and sneaked ashore through a small path. They thought that they would be able to catch the Thunderblaze dynasty off guard, but in the end they bumped into Lin Yuanliang. Lin Yuanliang showed his invincible power and killed a Tianyuan realm expert of the countries of the East Sea by himself. What's more, the army was utterly defeated and fled back to the East Sea. Since then, Lin Yuanliang's name shocked the whole Thunderflame army. With such a powerful cultivator and the old man from the Imperial Hall of Worship, how could the aged Thousand Illusion Sword Master be a match for the two of them? It seemed that everything was ready to destroy the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. Lin Yuanliang acted as if he didn't hear Ling Shiqi's flattery and said bluntly, "I've always been straightforward. I heard that Lord Lu has a way to gather the disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect and plans to break the Thousand Illusion 9 Pavilion Sword formation. How are the preparations?" Wu Yi knew that Ling Shiqi's temper wasn't very good. Now that Lin Yuanliang was so aggressive, he was afraid that the two would have a conflict. He immediately tried to smooth things over. "General Lin, I just received news that the Thousand Illusion Sword sect has begun to gather all the external disciples. It's said that it's a celebration for the 9th prince to become the crown prince." Lei Haoqing? Crown prince? Lin Yuanliang raised his eyebrows. "This is different from what I know." Before he finished his sentence, he suddenly paused and clapped his hands. "So that's how it is. Lord Lu only used one day to make the Thousand Illusion Sword sect receive false information and believe it to be true. Just based on this, regardless of what others say, I acknowledge you as one of the 4 great chiefs." Lung Shiqi continued, "Not only that, I also found the Thousand Illusion 9 Pavilion Sword Formation's core and secretly tampered with it. This formation is no longer a threat." Hearing this, Wu Yi and Lin Yuanliang were both shocked and felt that it was too unreal. In just one day he had given the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect false information, found the array core of the sect protecting formation, and even tampered with it. Was there really someone who could do this? Lung Shiqi really thought that the Thousand Illusion Sword sect was his own backyard and that he could come and go as he pleased without anyone noticing. What was even stranger was that they had never heard of Lung Shiqi knowing how to use formations. To be able to easily find the sect protecting formation's core and even tamper with it, one had to be a great formation master. After just a few words, Lin Yuanliang felt that Lung Shiqi seemed to be hiding many secrets. Wu Yi was even more unable to see through Lung Shiqi. He secretly thought that he was indeed extraordinary to be able to become one of the 4 great chiefs at such a young age. Chapter 701. After that, Lung Shiqi, Lin Yuanliang, and Wu Yi discussed the details of the plan. In 2 days they would attack the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. The Dark Thunder Guards and Discipline Commission of the Pinghui Prefecture began to move. All the experts split up and arrived near the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. The 10,000 soldiers of the Eastern Suppression Thunder Flame Army were also ready. Every soldier here was at least at the Spirit Transformation realm. They could be called the best army of the Thunderflame dynasty. 2 days later, it was time for the Thousand Illusion Sword sect to hold their celebration. Originally they wanted to invite the nearby sects to participate, but it was too rushed, so they gave up. As long as they spread the news, those sects would come to flatter them in the future. On this day the Thousand Illusion Sword sect master, Wei Qian, and several elders at the Unity of Heaven realm were sitting in a large square. In front of them were tens of thousands of disciples. Even though the Thousand Illusion Sword sect had declined, it was still a top sect. There were still many people who wanted to join the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. In the past, they were most worried about the talented disciples. Sect Master Wei Qian stood up. His face was flushed red. He had also inquired about the news from the imperial capital. The response he received was just as Lung Shiqi had said. Wei Qian was sure of it, so he decided to hold the celebration. The only thing that made him feel suspicious was that Ji Guang had secretly left the mountain. But this time Wei Qian didn't care too much. It was as if he could already see the Thousand Illusion Sword sect rising again and standing among the strong. His mentality had changed due to the great joy. At this moment he began to talk at length. Many of the disciples were very excited. However, just when they were at their most excited and happy, a voice came from the distance. The Thousand Illusion Sword sect is holding a celebration without inviting guests. How low-key. I came uninvited, please forgive me. Yu Qiyin frowned and turned around with all the disciples, only to see a few disciples who were guarding the mountain running up in a panic. They shouted as they ran, Head, the Dark Thunder Guards and the people from the Discipline Commission are here. Many masters are blocking the mountain gate. Why are the Dark Thunder Guards and Discipline Commission here at this time? Wei Qian was filled with doubt. Usually, they didn't interfere with each other's business. Now that the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect had made a great contribution, could it be that they were here to congratulate them? After all, the status of the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect would no longer be the same as before. It would definitely be higher than the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards, so it was reasonable for them to come and congratulate him. However, Wei Qian heard that the voice was full of sarcasm and ridicule. It seemed that the visitor was not friendly. Let's go and take a look, he ordered, and all the cultivators walked toward the mountain gate. When they saw Leng Shiqi standing at the front in his black and red official robe, and behind him were thousands of Dark Thunder Guards and masters of the Discipline Commission, each with a stern look, Wei Qian had a bad feeling. He didn't recognize Leng Shiqi, but he recognized the official uniform he was wearing. It was clearly the uniform of the Dark Thunder Guard's 4th Chief Steward. When Wei Qian contacted the Imperial capital, he also knew that the Dark Thunder Guard had a Gang Spirit Realm 4th Chief Steward. At first he secretly mocked him, but now he saw him. Wei Qian didn't think that the 4th Chief Steward came to the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect in person to congratulate him. He symbolically cupped his hands. In terms of status, he didn't think that he was inferior to the 4th Chief Steward. You must be Lord Lu. Congratulations on your high position at such a young age. I wonder what brings you to our Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect? Leng Shiqi said 2 words, gifts. What gifts? Swish. Leng Shiqi took out an imperial edict and said, by His Majesty's order, the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect colluded with the 9th Prince to disturb the imperial court and meddle in the battle for the Crown Prince. Nonsense. Wei Qian immediately shouted, our Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect clearly helped the 9th Prince to become the Crown Prince. How can we be guilty? Lord Lu, don't talk nonsense. You should know that trouble comes from careless talk. Leng Shiqi sneered, Wei Qian, do you think I'm here to play with you? Cut the crap. Today is the day your Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect will be destroyed. Aha, ridiculous. Wei Qian laughed disdainfully, you want to destroy our Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect? It's too ridiculous. Lord Lu, you're so young. Why is your brain not working well? General Lin, it's time for you to show up. Leng Shiqi said to the air in the distance. Immediately, dense figures swarmed out from all directions. Those people were neat and uniform and surrounded the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect at an extremely fast speed. Wei Qian's expression changed. He recognized that those people were the East Guarding Thunder Flame army of the Thunder Flame dynasty. There were more than 10,000 people as far as the eye could see. When did so many people hide near the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect? At this moment, he withdrew his disdain and arrogance. If these tens of thousands of East Guarding Thunder Flame army were added, the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect would really face a bitter battle. However, what truly frightened him was that, at some unknown time, there was a person standing high in the sky, looking down at them from above. That gaze was like looking at a group of dead people. This person was Lin Yuanliang. Due to his great reputation in the coastal provinces, he was quickly recognized by many disciples of the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect. Wei Qian was even more shocked. You're Lin Yuanliang. At this moment, his heart sank to the bottom of the valley. If he was worried about a bitter battle, he finally realized that the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect might really be destroyed today. Others might still think that they were lucky. After all, the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect also had the heavenly origin stage Thousand Illusionary Sword Sovereign. However, as the sect leader, Wei Qian knew better than anyone that their supreme elder was already in a weakened state. How could he be a match for Lin Yuanliang? Leng Shiqi said, Wei Qian, do you still think that my words are laughable? General Lin, a long delay may lead to trouble. Give the order. Lin Yuanliang did not answer. He pointed one finger at the sky and the wind and clouds changed. Then he clawed down. As if tearing the sky and earth apart, 5 hair-thin black lines appeared in the void. Wei Qian was shocked. If he touched it, he would die instantly. However, suddenly, a bright sword light shot up into the sky from the back mountain of the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a shocking sword radiance and cut off the 5 black lines. An extremely old figure appeared across the sky. He was the supreme elder of the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect, the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sovereign. Lin Yuanliang said coldly, let me see how much power the supreme elder of the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sovereign has left. Lung Shiqi looked at Wei Qian and the disciples of the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect. His killing intent rose and he waved his hand, "Kill." Chapter 702. More than 10,000 masters rushed up at once, especially the East Town Thunder Flame Army, the Dark Thunder Guards, and the masters in the Oneness of Heaven and Men realm and the Gang Spirit realm of the Discipline Department. They took the lead and rushed over like a sharp knife. All the disciples of the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect immediately panicked. Just a moment ago, it was still a celebratory atmosphere, but now it was a disaster. Although they were disciples of top sects and had their own pride, they still found it difficult to remain calm in the face of life and death. Yu Qian's face darkened. He knew that he could not panic at this time. He also knew that it was difficult to calm people with a few words, so he did not dare to hesitate and immediately shouted, "Open the sword formation of Thousand Illusions 9 pavilions." At present they were far inferior to the Lung Shiqi in both numbers and combat power, so they could only rely on the sect-protecting formation. Moreover, Yu Qian was very confident in the sword formation of Thousand Illusions 9 pavilions. Even if Lin Yuanliang was here, as long as the Thousand Illusion Sword Master was in the formation, he might be able to defeat Lin Yuanliang. He took out a formation plate and poured his spirit force into it. 9 places in the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect lit up with a dazzling light. There was even a trace of a dreamy feeling. Just looking at it would make one feel intoxicated. Seeing this, Yu Qian's face finally became a little better. If the formation was opened, they would have the ability to fight. Many disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect were indeed much calmer. The sect-protecting formation has been opened. Is this the sword formation of Thousand Illusions 9 pavilions? It's really powerful. With the protection of the formation, we may be able to fight. However, the next moment Yu Qian's expression suddenly froze. Because when the spiritual light of the sword formation of Thousand Illusions 9 pavilions was about to converge into the real formation, it strangely dissipated. Many disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect were also confused. They had never seen the formation open. Could it be that the sword formation of Thousand Illusions 9 pavilions was like this? Yu Qian's eyes widened and he almost choked to death. Including him, the senior members of the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect knew that the sword formation of Thousand Illusions 9 pavilions had collapsed by itself. One of the formation masters panicked and said, "Leader, the formation eye of the sect-protecting formation has been destroyed. We have a mole here." "What did you say?" Yu Qian was so angry that he almost lost control. He instantly turned around and looked at Lung Shiqi. The look in his eyes was as if he wanted to swallow Lung Shiqi alive. "It's you." Although Wei Qian couldn't find out who the traitor was, he was sure that it was Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi sneered. In fact, he could have launched a sneak attack directly. There was no need to talk nonsense with Yu Qian from the beginning. The reason why he did this was because he wanted to attack the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect openly. He wanted to intimidate them with his strength and force Wei Qian to activate the sect-protecting formation. The sect protection formation could be considered their strongest protection, and it was also equivalent to a life-saving straw. It could be said that everyone had placed their hopes on the Thousand Illusions 9 pavilion sword formation. When this hope was shattered, the disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect would be at their weakest. When there was hope and then there was despair, after a huge fluctuation in the state of mind, it would also greatly affect their combat effectiveness. Now, tens of thousands of soldiers and secret Thunder Guards had killed their way into the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect. These disciples, who were usually elites of the top sects, were killed without any power to fight back and were utterly defeated. As the saying goes, a defeated army is like a landslide. In this fight, the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect was already on the verge of defeat. In addition, in terms of high-end combat effectiveness, Lung Shiqi's side was 3 times that of the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect. Moreover, they were all experts carefully cultivated by the Thunderstorm dynasty. Their combat effectiveness was no weaker than that of the disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect. In just a few fights, several disciples of the Gang Spirit realm of the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect had died. Wei Qian's mind was blank. He had worked hard all his life to save the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect, but he had never thought that the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect would face a situation of collapse. What was even more unexpected was that a top sect would be defeated so quickly. Not only was it defeated, but if it went on like this, it would not be long before the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect completely disappeared from the world. The sect that Wei Qian had worked hard all his life to manage was about to disappear. He could no longer control himself. With red eyes, he rushed directly to the Leng Shiqi like a fierce beast. Wu Yi, Yanming and Deng Xinlei, who were beside Leng Shiqi, moved at the same time and stopped in front of him. Wei Qiyan held a 7th-level spiritual sword in his hand and set up a misty sword net with a turn of his hand. Suddenly, the spiritual power of heaven and earth became violent, and Wu Yi and the other two were momentarily absent-minded. In this short moment, Wei Qiyan's sword net suddenly broke out, leaving horrible sword marks on the bodies of Wu Yi and the other two in an instant. The three of them were also at the middle stage of the oneness of heaven and men realm, but they were vulnerable in front of the furious Wei Qiyan. It was not their fault that they were too weak. In fact, since they could become inspectors or supervisors of the secret Thunder Guards, their combat effectiveness was absolutely among the top of the same level. It could only be said that Wei Qiyan was too strong. He was a great master at the peak of the oneness of heaven and men realm and had been trying to break through to the Tianyuan realm. Not to mention that he was the leader of a top sect and could use all the resources at will. There was no doubt that his strength was strong. However, Wu Yi and the others had also bought some time for Leng Shiqi. Boom! Leng Shiqi activated the wild demon blood beast body and Vajra indestructible divine art. Coupled with the Gu King's possession, his body was filled with all kinds of strange auras that were unpredictable. He held the 10 directions fluttering snow spear in his right hand, and bursts of crimson ice crystals spread out, instantly forming a crimson hell. He held the blood-stained star demonic saber tightly in his left and right hand, and a saber light that could tear heaven and earth slashed out, slashing the physical body and the primordial spirit. Divine night blooming epiphyllum. Leng Shiqi stretched out his arms behind his back, and black and white streams of light intertwined and spiraled. A yin and yang dragon soared in the sky, and the surrounding spiritual power of heaven and earth became chaotic. Flying dragon great void. Just after Wu Yi and the other two were repelled, Wei Qiyan saw the powerful eruption of Leng Shiqi. He couldn't help but be surprised. Leng Shiqi gave him a feeling that he was more powerful than Wu Yi and the other two masters at the oneness of heaven and men realm. He was only at the gang spirit realm, but he had such a strong fighting capacity. His potential could only be described as terrifying. However, this level of attack was still a little weak in the eyes of Wei Qiyan. He stood with his sword horizontally and flicked the sword with one finger. In an instant, a sword sound surged out, tearing the crimson hell apart and even twisting the yin and yang dragon. Wei Qiyan stabbed again. The glaze-like sword light flashed and cut off the short-lived saber light as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The momentum of the sword light didn't diminish, and it cut the yin and yang dragon in the sky into 2 pieces. Leng Shiqi was shocked. It turned out that the peak of the oneness of heaven and men realm in his heyday was so powerful. When he killed Li Jueqing before, he only saw Hua Luiyue seriously injure Li Jueqing with one move. Now he thought that Hua Luiyue's strength was also abnormally strong. However, this made Leng Shiqi more eager to fight. Anyway, he had 2 masters at the Tianyuan realm here, and there were several masters at the oneness of heaven and men realm from the discipline commission around him. His own safety was guaranteed. Even if there was an accident, he could hide in the mansion of the dead. Since there was no worry, Leng Shiqi also wanted to test his limit on Wei Qiyan. Chapter 703. Wei Qiyan easily broke Leng Shiqi's attack, and the killing intent in his heart grew stronger. Even if he couldn't escape the calamity of extermination today, he would drag Leng Shiqi down with him. At this moment, an invisible blade suddenly hit Wei Qiyan. It was the short-lived primordial spirit saber light. Wei Qiyan immediately showed some pain. He was also very surprised that there was an invisible saber light that strangely tore at his spiritual power. However, as the sect leader of the 1,000 Illusionary Sword sect, he also cultivated illusions. His spiritual power had long condensed into a primordial spirit, and he quickly annihilated the invisible saber light. And Leng Shiqi was not alone. After Wu Yi was forced to retreat, he seized this good opportunity. He slapped out a palm print from afar, but there were eerie ghosts in the palm print, howling incessantly. Yan Ming held a heavy long staff and smashed it down. A staff shadow that was hundreds of feet long blasted toward Wei Qiyan with great force. Deng Xinlei had the strength to pull up a mountain. His entire body was stirred up with vigorous aura energy. He punched out as if he could shatter mountains and rivers. They knew very well that they were no match for Wei Qiyan, but as long as they could delay him, the sect leader, it was the best thing for them. Wei Qiyan was very impatient. With a flip of his left hand, he took out a 7th-level spirit sword. 2 swords came out at the same time. One sword was like dreamy glass that intoxicated people, while the other was like a white steed flashing through a crack as fast as lightning. These were the 2 sword moves in the 1000 Illusionary Sword technique, created by the founder of the 1000 Illusionary Sword sect. One was inclined towards illusions and the other was inclined towards speed. The founder combined the 2 sword moves into one. For a time, he was invincible and had never created such a huge foundation as the 1000 Illusionary Sword sect. Unfortunately, none of his descendants could completely combine the 2 sword moves. At most, they could only use the 2 sword moves separately like Wei Qiyan. Although the power was definitely not as good as the complete move, it was still powerful enough. The 2 completely different sword moves instantly broke the attack of Wu Yi and the other 2. They didn't stop Wei Qiyan for long at all. When Wu Yi and the others stopped Wei Qiyan, Leng Shiqi's 4 arms formed seals at the same time. What was shocking was that he was actually forming 4 completely different seals at the same time. Leng Shiqi's body flashed with red, green, blue and yellow spirit energy. Among them, the red spirit energy soared into the sky. The cry of a phoenix broke through the 9 heavens, and a vivid shadow of a fire bird soared into the sky. Bursts of flames caused the surrounding temperature to rise sharply. 16 heavens transformations, immortal bird. It affected the 1000 Illusion Sword Master Lin Yuanliang, and the old man who were in the Unity of Heaven and Man stage. The 3 of them subconsciously stopped. Although they were opponents, they had the same feeling at this moment. That was disbelief. Those who were in the celestial realm could not sense it, but the 2 of them clearly felt that Leng Shiqi had mobilized a power that even they could not comprehend. The power of the laws of heaven and earth. The 4 spirits formation rotated and enveloped Wei Qiyan. He suddenly felt a tearing force everywhere as if it was going to tear him apart. The power of the 4 elements of earth, water, wind, and fire surrounded him, making it difficult for him to even breathe. Wei Qiyan made a prompt decision to burn his blood essence and spit out a blood sword. As soon as the blood sword appeared, there was a pulling force that merged his 2 7th-level spiritual swords into it. The misty sword radiance flowed gently. He turned into a flowing light and instantly slashed out countless sword shadows. Wei Qiyan actually had some of the true essence of the 1000 Illusion Sword Codex. Unfortunately, in front of the power of the laws of heaven and earth, it was still too weak. Under the strangulation of the 4 spirits formation, Wei Qiyan was completely sealed. No matter how hard he tried to resist, he could not reverse the situation. In the end, the 4 spirits formation exploded, and more than half of the entire 1000 Illusion Sword sect collapsed. Everyone was in a panic, and no one knew how many unlucky people from the 1000 Illusory Sword sect were killed by the 4 spirits formation. Puff. Leng Shiqi suddenly spat out a large amount of blood, and traces of blood appeared on his 7 orifices. However, his eyes were unusually bright and there was a hint of surprise. However, his expression immediately became serious again, because he did not absorb Wei Qiyan's soul. That meant Wei Qiyan was not dead. Rolling his eyes, Leng Shiqi found that Wei Qiyan's body had fallen straight to the ground. His vitality was like a candle in the wind that could disappear at any time, but there was a faint sword shadow protecting his last trace of life. That should be his life-saving trump card, Leng Shiqi guessed. Wei Qiyan was the head of the 1000 Illusion Sword sect, so it was normal for him to have some life-saving trump cards. As long as he forced out this trump card, others could easily kill Wei Qiyan without having to do it himself. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.